Part 2, The Quest Begins. Chapter 11, Alliance Formed. The underwater sanctuary, a haven of peace amidst the chaos of the world above, offered Adrian Blackwood and Serena a brief but much-needed reprieve from the storm that had battered them both physically and emotionally. Its tranquil beauty, with its glowing bioluminescent coral and the gentle sway of the water, created an atmosphere of calm that felt almost surreal. In this serene environment, the harsh realities of their mission seemed momentarily distant. Yet, as they prepared to leave, the weight of the prophecy began to settle heavily on their hearts once more. Each word of the ancient scroll echoed in their minds, reminding them of the trials ahead, each more daunting than the last. The peaceful surroundings, while comforting, could not dull the sharp awareness that their true journey had only just begun. Adrian stood silently, the cool ocean breeze stirring his thoughts as he stared out into the deep waters. The trials that lay ahead would not be easily overcome. The prophecy had spoken of tests that would challenge their courage, their wisdom, and ultimately, their ability to sacrifice for the greater good. It was clear that the path they were about to walk would demand more than just physical strength. It would require a union of hearts and minds, a bond forged through adversity and deepened by the stakes of their mission. Serena, standing beside him, seemed to sense the gravity of his thoughts. The bond between them had already been tested, but the trials ahead would require even more from both of them. They would need to rely on each other in ways they hadn't yet imagined, drawing on the strength of their connection and the trust they had begun to build. As they exchanged a quiet glance, a shared understanding passed between them. The journey ahead was fraught with danger, and the challenges they would face would test not only their resolve but their ability to work as a unified force. Serena's steady gaze met Adrian's with a silent promise. No matter how difficult the trials would be, they would face them together. Their alliance, forged under pressure and shaped by the magic of the reef, would be the key to overcoming the darkness ahead. With a deep breath, they turned their attention back to the unknown depths of the sea, knowing that the trials of courage, wisdom, and sacrifice were waiting. They were ready to face them, for they had no other choice but to rely on the strength of their unity as they moved forward into the uncertainty of the path that lay ahead. Adrian and Serena glided through the water, leaving the sanctuary behind them, the peaceful glow of the bioluminescent coral fading into the depths. As they swam upward, the tranquil stillness of the grotto gave way to the open expanse of the ocean, its waters now alive with the movements of currents and shifting waves. The rhythmic pull of the sea seemed to hum beneath them, a reminder of the vastness of the world they were about to re-enter. The warmth of the sanctuary's magic lingered in their minds, but the reality of their quest quickly settled over them. The sense of serenity that had surrounded them in the sanctuary was replaced by a renewed focus and determination. The journey ahead was no longer just about survival. It was about unraveling the secrets of the magical reef and breaking the curse that bound Serena. As they rose through the water, the magical reef slowly came into view, a towering, vibrant structure that stretched out beneath the waves. The reef's colors were more vivid than ever, a stunning blend of emerald greens and sapphire blues, as if it were calling them to uncover its hidden truths. Despite the beauty of the reef, there was an undeniable weight to it, a sense of mystery and danger that Adrian could feel in his bones. The prophecy they had uncovered had warned them of the trials they would face, and though they had prepared themselves mentally, the sight of the reef brought an unsettling clarity to the magnitude of their task. It was not just a place of magic, it was a place of trials, of tests that would demand everything they had to offer. But Adrian, now more resolute than ever, felt ready to take the first steps into the unknown, with Serena by his side as both guide and ally. The surface loomed above them, the sunlight beginning to break through the water, casting ripples of light across the ocean's surface. The distance between them and the reef felt like the first step into a world that neither of them fully understood, yet both knew was their destiny. Serena's presence beside him was a steadying force, and Adrian felt the weight of her trust in him, as well as the promise they had made to face the trials together. They were no longer just two individuals on separate paths, but partners bound by fate and a shared commitment to breaking the curse. As they broke through the surface and emerged into the open ocean, they knew the journey ahead would be treacherous, but with each other's strength, they would face whatever the reef had in store. The deck of the Crimson Tempest creaked gently underfoot as Adrian paced, his hands clasped behind his back and his brow furrowed in thought. His mind churned with the weight of the prophecy and the trials awaiting them. The magical reef, with its vibrant mysteries and ominous challenges, felt like a living presence just beyond the horizon. Every step he took seemed to echo his inner turmoil, a mixture of determination and unease. Beside him, the ship's timbers whispered stories of countless voyages, a steady reminder of the resilience required for their journey. Adrian paused occasionally, his gaze flickering to Serena, who stood near the railing, her ethereal form framed by the soft light of the afternoon sun. Serena's eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the reef's allure seemed to call to her with an unrelenting pull. She remained calm and composed, but her posture betrayed the gravity of her thoughts. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, a vast expanse of possibility and danger. To the crew, she appeared as serene as the waters lapping against the ship's hull, but Adrian knew the truth. She carried the burden of the curse and the trials with a quiet fortitude that both inspired and humbled him. Her presence was a constant reminder of the stakes. They were not only fighting to unravel the secrets of the reef, but also to restore her freedom and balance to the sea. Around them, the crew moved with a sense of restrained anticipation, their tasks carried out with mechanical precision. The usual banter and camaraderie were subdued, replaced by a quiet tension. Though the crew was unaware of the full weight of the journey, they felt the shift in the air. Whispers of the reef's magic and the captain's unusual determination had spread among them, leaving an undercurrent of speculation and unease. Adrian glanced at Serena again, the unspoken understanding between them strengthening his resolve. He would not fail her or the crew, no matter what trials lay ahead. For now, the horizon remained a promise, and the Crimson Tempest sailed steadily toward its destiny. Adrian approached Serena with measured steps, his gaze meeting hers as the soft sea breeze brushed past them. The weight of the moment hung heavily between them, but Serena's calm and resolute expression offered a strange sense of reassurance. "We need to establish a plan," Adrian said, his voice steadied but laced with a hint of uncertainty. The enormity of the task ahead loomed large, and the thought of navigating the mysteries of the reef and its trials felt daunting. Yet, the presence of Serena, her unwavering strength and connection to the magic of the sea, grounded him in a way he hadn't expected. Serena turned to face him fully, her translucent form almost glowing against the horizon. "You're right," she replied, her tone measured and thoughtful. "The reef's secrets won't reveal themselves easily, and the trials will demand more than just courage. We'll need to approach each challenge with both strategy and trust in one another." Her gaze flicked to the distant reef, its silhouette just visible on the horizon. She spoke with a conviction that belied the immense uncertainties they faced, her words a reminder that preparation was not just practical, it was essential for their survival and success. Adrian nodded, absorbing her words as his thoughts began to align. "Then we start with what we know," he said, determination creeping into his voice. "We study the scroll and any clues we've already gathered. We prepare the crew for what's to come, even if they don't know the full truth. And we rely on each other." He paused, his eyes softening as he regarded her. "This isn't a journey I would have chosen, but it's one I'm committed to seeing through, with you." Serena's faint smile held both gratitude and resolve, and together they turned toward the horizon, the uncharted waters ahead no longer just a challenge, but a shared purpose. Serena nodded, her ethereal presence steady and resolute. "Yes," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of their shared responsibility. "To navigate the magical reef and break the curse, we must form a true alliance." Her words resonated with purpose, reminding Adrian that their fates were intertwined. The challenges ahead were not just about survival, but about forging a bond strong enough to overcome the trials that awaited them. The reef's mysteries would not yield to anything less than their complete unity. She stepped closer to Adrian, her gaze intent. "Our success depends on how well we can work together and trust each other," she continued. "The reef's magic tests not just the body but the spirit. We'll be stronger if we move as one, with no doubt between us." Serena's words were both a challenge and a reassurance, urging Adrian to see the necessity of their collaboration. The stakes were immense, but she believed in the strength they could build together. Adrian met her gaze, feeling a flicker of confidence rise within him. The weight of the prophecy and the trials ahead pressed heavily on his shoulders, but Serena's determination gave him hope. "Then we'll do it," he said firmly. "We'll learn to trust each other completely and face whatever comes as a team." The horizon stretched before them, vast and uncertain, but in that moment, Adrian felt a sense of clarity. With Serena by his side, he knew they stood a chance against the odds. Adrian studied Serena carefully, his brow furrowed as his thoughts churned with the uncertainty of their journey. "I'll admit," he began, his voice low but sincere, "this alliance is uneasy for me." His honesty hung in the air, unguarded and raw. "The reef is uncharted, and I don't fully understand its magic." He gestured toward the distant horizon, where the shimmering outline of the reef lingered like a ghost. His words carried a trace of vulnerability, an acknowledgement of his limitations in the face of the unknown. Serena's expression softened, her otherworldly calm contrasting with Adrian's tension. "Your unease is understandable," she said gently. "The magic of the reef is ancient and complex, not easily grasped by those unfamiliar with its ways. But that is why we are here together. My knowledge of its depths and your resilience in navigating its dangers will be the balance we need." Her words weren't just meant to reassure. They were a reminder that their combined strengths were greater than their individual doubts. Adrian nodded slowly, his gaze shifting back to the horizon. "I trust that you know more about it than I do," he said, his tone resolute despite the lingering uncertainty. The admission was a step forward, an acknowledgement of their shared dependence. For all his wariness, he recognized that Serena's understanding of the reef's magic was essential. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he resolved to face them with an open mind, trusting that their uneasy alliance would evolve into the partnership they needed to succeed. Serena's eyes softened as she met Adrian's steady gaze, her voice calm yet resolute. "And I must trust that your courage and resourcefulness will be our greatest assets," she said, her words carrying the weight of sincerity. "We each bring something crucial to this alliance. While I understand the magic of the reef, it will be your experience and leadership that guide us through the challenges we have yet to face." Her tone held a quiet confidence, one that sought to reassure him while affirming their shared responsibility in the trials ahead. Adrian felt the impact of her words settle over him, a mixture of humility and determination taking root. He understood the gravity of their situation and the unique dynamic they were forging. For all her knowledge of the reef's ancient magic, Serena was entrusting him with the practicalities of survival and decision-making, a balance that demanded mutual respect. "I'll do my best," he replied, his voice steady. "But we're only going to succeed if we rely on each other fully. No second-guessing, no holding back." Serena nodded, a faint smile gracing her lips as the tension between them softened. "Agreed," she said simply. "The reef will challenge us in ways neither of us can fully anticipate, but together, we have a chance." Her gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the faint shimmer of the reef awaited, a symbol of both peril and promise. In that moment, the weight of the alliance they were building felt less daunting, replaced by a shared determination to face the unknown as partners bound by trust and necessity. Adrian drew in a steadying breath, his gaze firm as he extended his hand toward Serena. "Then let's form this alliance," he said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "We'll face the trials together, and we'll support each other every step of the way." The weight of his words hung in the air, carrying both the gravity of their shared mission and the unspoken hope that they could overcome the daunting challenges ahead. His gesture was simple but profound, a tangible sign of the trust he was choosing to place in her. Serena regarded his outstretched hand with a mixture of solemnity and warmth. Slowly, she reached out, her fingers brushing his before clasping his hand firmly. "Together," she agreed, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. In that moment, the tension that had lingered between them eased, replaced by an unspoken understanding. The bond they were forging, born of necessity and tempered by mutual respect, felt solid and unyielding, a promise to stand united against the unknown. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke, the silence filled only by the gentle lapping of waves against the hull of the ship. Their hands lingered together before they stepped back, the alliance sealed. Adrian's resolve was bolstered by the gesture, and Serena's gaze held a newfound confidence. With the trials of the magical reef looming on the horizon, they turned their attention to the tasks at hand, knowing that the strength of their partnership would be tested but also knowing they were ready to face it together. Serena reached out and clasped Adrian's hand, the touch firm yet imbued with an undeniable sense of camaraderie. "Agreed," she said, her voice steady but carrying a subtle undertone of hope. "Together, we will uncover the secrets of the reef and find a way to break the curse." The simplicity of her words belied the magnitude of their commitment, binding them to a shared purpose in a way that felt unshakable. For the first time, the tension that had often underpinned their interactions gave way to a quiet, mutual respect. As their hands lingered in the gesture, the surrounding sea seemed to echo their resolve. The faint hum of the ocean breeze and the rhythmic creak of the ships would form the backdrop to their silent understanding. Serena's emerald eyes held Adrian's gaze, reflecting not only her determination but also a flicker of gratitude. For all her knowledge of the reef's magic, this alliance offered her something she had long been without, a true partner to share the burden of her destiny. Releasing his hand, Serena stepped back, a renewed focus evident in her stance. Adrian straightened, his own resolve solidified by the moment of unity. "We'll need a plan," he said, his tone thoughtful yet resolute. "And we'll need to be ready for whatever the reef throws at us." Serena nodded, her expression a mirror of his determination. Together, they turned toward the horizon, where the mysteries of the reef and the trials of the prophecy awaited, ready to face the challenges as partners bound by a shared destiny. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the ocean in hues of gold and crimson as Adrian and Serena stood on the deck of the Crimson Tempest. The tranquil scene belied the gravity of the task ahead as they reviewed their plan, their voices low but purposeful. Adrian spread out a map on a nearby barrel, marking their route while Serena traced her fingers over it, pointing out critical areas where the reef's magical currents were strongest. "It's not just a physical journey," she said, her tone measured but insistent. "The reef is alive with enchantments, and its pathways are constantly shifting. We'll need more than instinct to navigate it. We'll need understanding." Adrian nodded, absorbing her words as he leaned over the map, his brow furrowed in concentration. "So, it's not just about finding the right path but also reading the signs the reef gives us," he surmised, his voice thoughtful. Serena's approving glance told him he was on the right track. She explained further, detailing the nature of the magical currents that wove through the reef like veins of energy. They would have to rely on her knowledge to interpret the subtle cues the reef provided, fluctuations in light, shifts in water temperature, and even the behavior of sea creatures that called the reef home. Every detail mattered, and their lives could depend on recognizing them. As the last light of the sun vanished below the horizon, leaving the sky awash with stars, Adrian rolled up the map with a sense of finality. The plan was as complete as it could be, but both he and Serena knew that much of what lay ahead was beyond their control. "We'll set sail at dawn," Adrian said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty of what awaited them. Serena nodded, her expression a mixture of resolve and quiet anticipation. Together, they turned their gazes to the distant, unseen reef, the weight of their shared destiny palpable in the cool night air. Serena's voice carried an almost reverent tone as she addressed Adrian, the soft lull of the waves punctuating her words. "The reef is not just a place," she said, her gaze distant as if she were recalling a memory long buried. "It is a living entity, with its own consciousness and will." Her words hung in the air, their gravity sinking into Adrian's thoughts. He studied her expression, noticing the faint trace of awe and caution in her eyes. It was clear she viewed the reef as something more than a destination. It was a force to be reckoned with, a guardian of secrets that required more than mere bravery to unlock. "We must approach it with respect and caution," Serena continued, her voice steady but tinged with warning. She described the reef's duality, its magic, both wondrous and perilous. It responds to those who seek its depths, testing their intentions and their strength. If we act out of greed or recklessness, it will turn against us. Adrian listened intently, his mind racing as he tried to reconcile the idea of an underwater labyrinth imbued with consciousness. He realized that their journey would demand not only physical endurance but also an acute sensitivity to the unseen forces at play. Adrian straightened, his resolve solidifying. "Then we'll approach it as we would any formidable ally," he said, meeting Serena's gaze. "With respect and readiness for whatever it throws our way." Serena's lips curved into a faint smile, a flicker of approval crossing her face. The reef loomed ahead, an enigma wrapped in beauty and danger, but in this moment, their shared understanding felt like a step forward. Together, they turned their focus back to their preparations, knowing that the challenges awaiting them would require a delicate balance of wisdom, courage, and unity. Adrian leaned slightly forward, his attention fully on Serena as he considered her words. "What should we expect when we get closer?" he asked, his voice low but laced with determination. "Any specific challenges we should be aware of?" He wanted to prepare, to steel himself for what lay ahead, but the mystery of the reef left too many unanswered questions. It was unlike any other challenge he had faced, and the uncertainty gnawed at him. Serena paused, her gaze drifting to the horizon as though she could see the reef in her mind's eye. "The reef is ever-changing," she began, her voice thoughtful. "Its magic creates illusions, shifting pathways, and currents that can disorient even the most experienced navigators. But more than that, it senses those who approach. It will test us, presenting trials that force us to confront our fears and doubts." Her tone grew somber as she added, "We must remain vigilant and trust in each other. Only by working together can we hope to navigate its challenges." Adrian nodded, digesting her words. The thought of illusions and shifting paths made the journey feel even more daunting, but he took solace in Serena's steady presence and her knowledge of the reef. "Then we'll be ready," he said, his voice firm. "We'll face whatever comes our way and prove that we're worthy of uncovering its secrets." His resolve was unshaken, even as a flicker of apprehension passed through him. For now, their focus was on preparation and unity, a foundation he knew they would need as they ventured closer to the enigmatic reef. Serena's expression darkened as she spoke, the weight of the reef's mystery settling heavily on her shoulders. "The reef will test us in ways we cannot anticipate," she warned, her tone steady but laced with an underlying caution. "There will be illusions designed to mislead us, to make us question what's real and what's not. We might see things that seem familiar, yet they will be distorted, pulling us off course." She met Adrian's gaze, her eyes filled with the gravity of the journey ahead. "It will be a place where our minds and hearts will be tested." Adrian absorbed her words, the reality of what lay before them settling like a heavy weight in his chest. The idea of illusions was troubling. He had always trusted his instincts, but this was a new challenge altogether. "And the creatures?" he asked, his voice low. "You mentioned guardians. What kind of threats are we facing there?" His thoughts turned to the dangers they might encounter, monstrous creatures or perhaps sentient forces that protected the reef's secrets. The unknowns were endless, but he knew one thing for certain: the stakes were higher than ever. Serena's gaze softened as she responded. "The creatures that guard the reef are not just physical threats. They are manifestations of the reef's magic, designed to protect its deepest secrets. Some will try to deceive us, others will challenge our resolve, and a few may even try to destroy us if we're not careful. But we cannot let fear cloud our judgment. We must remain vigilant and trust in each other's strengths. It is the only way we will succeed." Her voice was calm, but her words carried an undeniable conviction, a reminder that their bond was the key to surviving the trials ahead. Adrian's mind churned with the weight of Serena's words, yet a sense of determination began to settle within him. He knew the road ahead would be perilous, but there was a fire in him now that burned with purpose. He looked at Serena, meeting her gaze with steady resolve. "We'll be ready," he said, his voice firm. "We've faced dangers before, and we'll face them again. The reef might be shrouded in mystery, but we know how to adapt and overcome. We've weathered storms, literal and figurative, and this will be no different." His confidence, though tempered by the unknown, bolstered the quiet assurance he saw reflected in Serena's eyes. He exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the decision to move forward, but also the strength of the partnership they had forged. Their combined skills, his leadership, and Serena's deep knowledge of the reef's magic gave him a sense of preparedness he hadn't thought possible in such an uncertain situation. With our combined strengths and the trust between us, I believe we can overcome whatever challenges come our way. He continued, his words carrying a sense of finality. The reef may hold countless secrets, but it would not stand in their way, not as long as they stood united. Serena gave a slight nod, her expression resolute, though there was a trace of warmth in her eyes. I believe that too, she replied softly. Our alliance is our greatest weapon. If we stay true to it, no trial will be too great. We've come this far, and together, we will see this through. Her voice held the quiet confidence that matched Adrian's, a reminder that their journey, however uncertain, was one they would face side by side. With that, they turned their gaze toward the looming horizon, ready to face the challenges that awaited them, knowing that together, they stood a chance. As the crimson tempest sailed closer to the reef, the waters began to shimmer with an ethereal glow, the once distant lights now pulsating in vibrant hues. The magical coral formations, bathed in the glow of the setting sun, appeared to come alive, shifting in an intricate dance as if responding to their approach. The air itself seemed to thrum with an ancient energy, vibrating with power as if the very sea was aware of their presence. The enchantments that lay hidden beneath the surface were no longer subtle. They reached out, an invisible force beckoning them forward. Adrian and Serena stood at the bow, their eyes fixed on the shifting lights ahead, both feeling the weight of the reef's magic pressing in around them. The sea seemed to hum in harmony with the ship, each swell of the waves carrying a resonance that made the hairs on the back of Adrian's neck stand on end. It was as though the ocean itself was alive, watching, waiting, and testing their resolve. The closer they came, the more palpable the sense of the unknown became. Serena's expression was one of both awe and caution. She had felt the power of the reef before, but now, with the prophecy pressing on their shoulders, the intensity of the magic seemed to amplify. It's like the reef is alive, Adrian murmured, his voice low. Do you feel it? The pull, the power in the air? Serena nodded, her gaze unwavering as she surveyed the horizon. This is only the beginning, she said, her tone quiet but filled with an undeniable determination. The reef will reveal its secrets, but we must be prepared for what it may demand from us. This magic is both beautiful and dangerous, and we must approach it with the utmost care. As the crimson tempest continued its journey toward the heart of the reef, the sensation of stepping into an ancient, powerful force only grew stronger, making it clear that whatever awaited them would require everything they had. Their journey into the heart of the reef was no longer just a quest, it was a trial of their strength, courage, and trust in each other. With their alliance firmly in place, Adrian and Serena stood side by side on the deck of the Crimson Tempest, the wind whipping through their hair and the salt of the sea in the air. Their eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the magical reef loomed like a shadow on the water, a place of untold mysteries and ancient powers. The weight of the prophecy, the trials they would face, and the curse they sought to break all hung heavily in their hearts. But despite the uncertainty of what lay ahead, they found strength in each other. Their bond had been tested, and through their shared commitment, it had become their greatest asset. Together, they were ready to confront the challenges that the reef would present. The sea around them seemed to echo the call of the reef, its energy vibrating in the very waves that rocked the ship. The knowledge that they were stepping into the unknown weighed on them both, yet there was an undeniable sense of purpose in their movements. Serena's presence was a steadying force beside Adrian, a reminder that they were not alone in this journey. The magic of the reef, though daunting, was no longer an obstacle. It was something to be embraced, something they would face together, as one. They knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but their trust in each other would guide them through it. As the ship drew closer to the reef, the waters grew darker and more mysterious, the once shimmering coral now glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. The air was thick with enchantment, and every wave seemed to pulse with the power of the ancient sea. But Adrian and Serena stood resolute, the weight of their shared mission a constant presence between them. They were no longer just two individuals embarking on a quest. They were allies, bound by a common goal and a deep, unspoken understanding. With the trials of the reef awaiting them, they knew they had only one choice: to face them together, and to trust in the strength of their alliance to carry them through. The truth of the reef, and the breaking of Serena's curse, was within their reach. Chapter 12: Uncharted Waters. The Crimson Tempest sailed slowly through the vibrant azure waters, the crew tense with anticipation as they neared the magical reef. The ship's sails billowed in the wind, but the usual sense of adventure was muted by the weight of the unknown that loomed ahead. Every crew member was on high alert, eyes scanning the waters for any sign of danger, yet the calm surface seemed deceptively serene. The rhythmic creaking of the ship and the occasional flap of seagull wings were the only sounds to break the silence. As they neared the reef, the ocean itself seemed to shift, the water taking on a deeper, more mysterious hue, hinting at the secrets and challenges awaiting below. At the prow of the ship, Adrian, Blackwood, and Serena stood side by side, their gaze fixed on the shimmering expanse of the reef beneath them. The once familiar world of the open sea was now replaced by the strange and magical landscape unfolding before them. The water below sparkled with an otherworldly light, casting an ethereal glow that reflected off the ship's hull. The coral formation stretched out like a vast, intricate labyrinth, their vivid colors shifting and changing as if they were alive, responding to the presence of the ship. Blue, green, and violet hues blended together in a mesmerizing pattern, creating an almost surreal mosaic beneath the surface. Serena's keen eyes studied the reef, her knowledge of its hidden depths and magic guiding her every thought. She could feel the subtle pulse of its enchantments, the way the very sea seemed to breathe in rhythm with her own heart. Despite the beauty, there was an underlying sense of danger, a reminder of the trials ahead. The reef was not just a natural wonder, it was a living entity, full of both wonder and peril. She could almost hear the whispers of its ancient magic calling out, urging them to proceed with caution. Serena's connection to the reef was deep, but even she knew that the forces they were about to encounter could test even the strongest of bonds. Adrian stood silently beside her, his thoughts running parallel to hers. He had always been a man of action, quick to lead and make decisions, but now, as the reef's mysteries beckoned, he could sense the weight of their shared responsibility. This journey was no longer just about breaking a curse. It was about surviving the trials and navigating the challenges that the reef would throw at them. He had faced storms, battles, and countless hardships in his life, but something about the stillness of the water, the quiet anticipation that hung in the air, felt different. They were about to step into a realm where every decision could mean the difference between life and death. And yet, in that moment, all he could do was trust in the alliance they had forged and in the strength of their resolve. As the Crimson Tempest came to a gradual halt at the edge of the magical reef, the atmosphere on board shifted. The steady hum of the ship's engine faded into a tense silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of the sails and the creaking of the wooden deck. Adrian and Serena stood at the ship's stern, their eyes locked on the expanse of water that now lay before them. The reef's glowing coral stretched far beneath the surface, casting an eerie, shifting light that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the ocean itself. Every movement of the sea around them felt heightened, as if the very waters were aware of the momentous task that lay ahead. The air around them crackled with anticipation, and the steady beat of their hearts matched the slow thrum of the ocean's pulse. Serena adjusted the straps of her gear, her expression focused, as she glanced at Adrian. Both knew the significance of this moment. The time for words was over. There would be no turning back once they entered the water, no second chances. The reef held mysteries and dangers they had yet to comprehend, and they had to be prepared for whatever awaited them beneath the surface. Their shared resolve solidified the silence between them, each confident in the other's strength and determination. With a final check of their equipment, Adrian secured his harness and gave Serena a brief nod, signaling he was ready. Serena met his gaze with a quiet intensity, her lips barely curling into a smile. They had trained for this moment, prepared for countless possibilities, but the unknowns of the magical reef still lingered in the back of their minds. They would need all their combined skills, trust, and courage to navigate its depths and uncover the secrets hidden beneath the coral. Without a word, Serena moved to the edge of the ship, her body poised and steady as she looked once more at the water below, preparing to take the plunge. In a single fluid motion, Serena dove into the water, her form disappearing into the depths with barely a ripple. Adrian followed immediately after, his body cutting through the surface with practiced precision. The cool embrace of the ocean enveloped him as he descended, the vibrant colors of the reef growing brighter the deeper he went. The weight of the water, the buoyancy of his dive suit, and the rush of movement all combined to heighten his senses. As the last glimpse of the crimson tempest faded from view, the vast, silent world of the reef stretched out before him, its mysteries calling to them, its trials waiting to test their resolve. The moment Adrian and Serena plunged into the reef's waters, they were immediately immersed in an ethereal world. The clarity of the water allowed them to see for what seemed like miles, the vibrant coral formations unfolding before them like a living tapestry. Towers of coral twisted and spiraled toward the surface, their jagged edges softened by the pulsating glow of bioluminescent branches that shimmered in the dark. The reef felt alive, not just in its motion, but in the way its beauty seemed to breathe, shifting with each current and ripple that passed through it. Every corner revealed new wonders, delicate, translucency plants, glowing creatures that drifted like stars, and patterns in the water that seemed almost too perfect to be natural. As they swam deeper into the reef, schools of fish swirled around them, their silver scales reflecting the soft, diffused light in dazzling, almost hypnotic patterns. The fish darted effortlessly through the water, their movements synchronized in a graceful dance. The air around them was alive with the sounds of the ocean, subtle clicks, the gentle hum of currents, and the occasional distant song of a whale. The sense of tranquility was overwhelming, yet there was an underlying tension in the water, an invisible current that hinted at the power and danger lurking just beneath the surface. Adrian's breath slowed as he took in the mesmerizing beauty, but there was no time to linger on the wonders. The trials they had come to face were still ahead. Serena's steady presence beside him kept Adrian grounded as they navigated the reef's labyrinthine passages. The deeper they went, the more intricate and alive the reef seemed. They passed through narrow corridors, where the corals seemed to close in around them like walls, only to emerge into open expanses where the light flickered in mysterious patterns. Each turn held new, magical sights, hidden caverns glittering with mineral deposits, iridescent sea creatures drifting lazily in the gentle currents, and strange, beautiful plant life that swayed rhythmically. It was a world that felt both welcoming and unknowable, and as they moved further into the heart of the reef, Adrian couldn't shake the sense that they were not merely visitors here. They were intruders in a realm that had its own rules and secrets. Serena moved with effortless grace, her form cutting through the water with the precision of someone deeply attuned to the currents of the sea. Adrian followed closely behind, his eyes never leaving her, entranced by the fluidity of her movements as she weaved through the labyrinth of coral. The reef, alive with an otherworldly energy, seemed to respond to Serena's presence, the water itself shifting and pulsating in time with the rhythm of her movements. It was as though the reef recognized her, acknowledging her as part of its ancient fabric, its pulse quickening in response to the magic she carried. Each delicate flick of her hand or swish of her tail guided Adrian through the maze, her confidence instilling a sense of calm in him despite the unfamiliar territory. As they navigated deeper into the reef, the water around them shimmered with a subtle, ethereal glow, the light filtering through the tangled corals and swirling patterns. The air felt thick with the reef's magic, the energy seeming to hum through every inch of the water. It was a sensation that bordered on overwhelming, as though the very fabric of reality was slightly bent here, and Adrian could feel the power reverberating through him with every breath he took. The coral formations that surrounded them were not just natural structures, but ancient relics imbued with the essence of the sea. Their colors shifted from soft pastels to vibrant hues, reflecting the unseen magic that infused this place. Serena led Adrian through narrow, winding passages between towering columns of coral that seemed to grow in impossible directions. The narrow tunnels opened up into vast underwater caverns, their ceilings adorned with glowing sea anemones and clusters of shimmering shells that caught the faint light. The atmosphere within each cavern was heavy with a strange, yet calming, pressure, as though the very air they breathed had been imbued with the timeless energy of the reef. In each new space, the feeling of enchantment deepened, but so too did the tension that hung in the water, as if each turn brought them closer to an unknown threshold. Serena's calm demeanor never wavered, even as the magic seemed to thrum with an intensity that Adrian couldn't quite understand. As they descended into one of the largest caverns yet, Adrian noticed the way the water seemed to grow denser, almost as if it were thick with the weight of unspoken secrets. Serena paused, her eyes narrowing slightly as she scanned the depths, her senses attuned to the unseen forces at play. The magic of the reef was not benign. It was ancient and potent, capable of both creation and destruction. Serena's trust in her knowledge of the reef's ways was clear. She had spent her life studying its mysteries. But even she knew that they were on the brink of something far more powerful than anything they had encountered so far. The journey ahead was not just a test of their physical endurance, but of their very souls, and Serena's quiet strength was the anchor Adrian needed as they moved forward, deeper into the heart of the magical reef. Adrian's grip tightened on his gear as he nodded in acknowledgement, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and caution. Serena's voice, steady and commanding through their communication devices, carried a weight of experience, a reminder of the vast unknown that lay ahead. The underwater world around them seemed both beautiful and intimidating, its vibrant coral structures and shimmering fish belying the lurking dangers that Serena had warned him about. He could feel the pressure of the deep ocean surrounding them, a silent reminder that every inch of the reef held both wonder and peril. With Serena leading the way, he trusted in her knowledge of this place, but he was keenly aware that danger could be hiding just around the next turn. The deeper they ventured into the reef, the more the landscape shifted. The soft glow of bioluminescent creatures bathed the surroundings in an otherworldly light, but there were darker areas where shadows seemed to move, shifting with the current. Adrian kept close to Serena, not wanting to risk losing sight of her in the labyrinth of coral that seemed to change shape with every passing moment. The stillness of the water was deceiving, for Adrian could sense the life all around them, the swirling schools of fish that darted by in perfect harmony, the subtle movements of sea creatures that blended seamlessly with their environment, and the quiet hum of the reef's magic. But amidst the beauty, Adrian's instincts told him that danger was never far away. Serena's movements remained fluid and purposeful as she navigated the shifting maze, her eyes scanning the waters ahead for any signs of trouble. "Trust your senses," she advised, her voice calm but laced with urgency. "The reef will challenge us in ways we cannot predict. Stay alert." Adrian's pulse quickened as he followed her lead, his senses heightened. Each time they passed through a narrow coral passage or ventured into a cavern, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. The reef felt alive, not just in the physical sense but in a deeper, more mysterious way, as though it were aware of their presence, testing their every move. His heart pounded in his chest, but he fought to keep his focus, knowing that any distraction could be dangerous in this enchanted and unpredictable place. The further they journeyed, the more Adrian could feel the weight of the reef's power. It wasn't just the visible danger, sharp, jagged rocks or swift currents. It was the underlying, almost palpable magic that surrounded them. Serena's warnings echoed in his mind as he followed closely behind her, aware that this place was not only a natural wonder but a sentient force, capable of shaping their fate. Every step forward felt like an unwritten chapter, and he couldn't help but wonder what trial they would face next. The deeper they went, the more it became clear that they weren't just exploring the reef. They were being tested, and the true challenge would be surviving and understanding its mystical forces. Adrian's gaze swept over the intricate maze of coral that surrounded them, his mind racing to process the surreal beauty and danger of the reef. The glowing bioluminescent tendrils of the coral flickered like stars beneath the water, casting long shadows that seemed to shift with each passing movement. He could feel the ancient magic pulsating in the very water around him, as if the reef itself was alive, watching them. Despite the awe that surged within him, Adrian couldn't shake the underlying wariness that tightened his chest. This place was full of secrets, some perhaps harmless, others likely perilous, and he knew they had to remain vigilant. Every sound, every movement in the water, could be a sign of something new, something unexpected. Serena continued to move ahead, her pace steady, but Adrian's eyes stayed sharp. He followed her through the winding passages of coral and into deeper waters, where the shadows seemed to lengthen and the current tugged at them with an unfamiliar force. The water felt thick, charged with magic, and it made the air seem heavy with anticipation. As they swam deeper into the heart of the reef, the space around them began to grow more enclosed, as though they were entering a domain that had been untouched by time. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their breathing through the communication devices. But even that felt muted, swallowed by the vastness of the underwater world. Adrian's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of their quest pressing down on him with each passing moment. He stole a glance at Serena, her face focused and resolute, her experience in navigating these waters evident in the way she moved. He felt a deep sense of trust in her, but also a flicker of uncertainty about what lay ahead. "The reef may hold more than we expect," he murmured, his voice barely audible through the water. "We have to be ready for anything." Despite his words, he steeled himself for whatever was to come, drawing strength from the shared purpose that connected him to Serena. Whatever the reef had in store, they would face it together. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the reef, the environment around them began to transform in subtle, yet unsettling ways. The coral formations, once static and predictable, now seemed to shift and warp with every movement they made, as though the very reef was alive and reacting to their presence. The paths that had seemed clear moments before now led to dead ends, while others opened up into new, unexpected corridors. Adrian's pulse quickened as he realized that they were no longer in a static, mapped space, but caught within a constantly changing labyrinth. Every turn seemed to lead them in a different direction, with the glowing coral lighting up in new hues as they swam deeper, creating an ethereal maze of color and light that felt both enchanting and disorienting. Serena, ever the expert, moved with calm precision, her movements steady as she led them through the twisting passages. Yet even she seemed to pause now and then, her sharp eyes scanning the water around them for clues about the shifting paths. The maze was a challenge, and she knew that every move had to be made with care. The reef was testing them, forcing them to adapt quickly to its changing rhythms. Adrian followed closely, his mind racing to stay ahead of the constantly shifting scenery. Each turn and change in the landscape brought new sights, bioluminescent creatures that glowed softly against the dark, unusual formations of coral that twisted like intricate sculptures, and vibrant schools of fish that darted past them like streaks of color in the water. The further they swam, the more the maze seemed to grow in complexity. Adrian could feel the water around them becoming heavier, charged with a subtle energy that pulsed through the reef. It was as though the very reef itself was alive, aware of their presence, and determined to keep them moving in circles. His mind buzzed with a sense of urgency. They needed to keep moving forward, to find a way through the maze before it closed in on them entirely. Yet, despite the pressure, there was something undeniably beautiful about the labyrinth, something mesmerizing in the way the coral seemed to pulse with life and light, guiding them even as it tested their resolve. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of navigating the winding, ever-shifting passages, Adrian and Serena came to a brief halt in a small, open area within the maze. The water here was calm, and the air seemed to clear, offering them a moment to collect their thoughts. Adrian exhaled slowly, grateful for the pause. "This place doesn't make it easy, does it?" he remarked, the tension in his voice reflecting the mental strain of navigating through the unpredictable paths. Serena gave him a wry smile, though there was a flicker of seriousness in her eyes. "The reef does not reveal its secrets easily," she replied, her voice steady despite the challenge they had just faced. "But we are one step closer." Without warning, the water around them began to stir, a powerful current surging through the passage like an invisible force. The once calm, steady flow of the water shifted into a chaotic swirl, pulling at their bodies and threatening to drag them off course. The sound of rushing water filled their ears as the current began to tug relentlessly at their limbs, making it almost impossible to stay in control. Adrian's eyes widened in surprise as the force of the current surged around them, pushing him dangerously toward the walls of the coral labyrinth. He instinctively reached out, trying to steady himself, but the water continued to pull him with an unnatural strength. Serena, her movements graceful and unfazed by the surge, was already aware of the danger. She had experienced this before. In one swift motion, she reached out and grabbed Adrian's arm, her grip firm and steady. With practiced ease, she maneuvered them both toward a more stable section of the passage, away from the heart of the swirling current. The water's pull weakened slightly as they found their footing against a small outcropping of coral, giving them a moment to catch their breath. "Stay close," she instructed, her voice calm but urgent, despite the intensity of the moment. "We mustn't fight the current directly. Instead, we need to move with its rhythm." Adrian, still shaken from the sudden onslaught of the current, nodded quickly, his gaze focused on Serena. He trusted her expertise, but the force of the reef's magic was far more intense than he had anticipated. "These currents are enchanted?" he asked, his voice tight as he adjusted his stance, careful not to let the water sweep him away again. Serena gave a small, knowing nod. "Yes. They're designed to disorient us, to make us question our purpose and our ability to move forward. The reef tests both our physical endurance and our mental resolve. If we allow the current to push us, we lose our focus and our way." Adrian took a deep breath, his mind steeling itself for the task ahead. The strength of the current still pulsed in the water around them, but with Serena's guidance, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. "We'll move carefully," he said, his tone now steady. "We won't let it break us." Together, they adjusted their course, moving with the rhythm of the current, trusting in each other's presence and the shared resolve that had brought them this far. Each carefully calculated movement was a reminder of the alliance they had forged, and with every passing moment, their bond grew stronger, steadier in the face of the reef's challenges. They pressed on against the swirling current, each movement deliberate and calculated. Adrian led with brute strength, anchoring himself against the coral when the water's pull grew too fierce, while Serena's practiced grace allowed her to anticipate and guide their path. Together, their coordination proved unyielding, a silent testament to the trust they were building. The labyrinth seemed alive, shifting unpredictably with each step, as if testing their resolve to continue. Every turn and every surge of the current demanded focus, but their shared determination carried them forward. Finally, the unrelenting force of the current eased, and they found themselves drifting into an open space. The chamber they entered was unlike anything they had encountered before, vast and ethereal. It felt as though they had stumbled into a realm of pure magic. The walls of the cavern shimmered with glowing flora, plants that pulsed softly in shades of blue, violet, and green. Each hue bathed the water in an otherworldly light, creating an atmosphere of serene enchantment. Adrian turned in place, his gaze sweeping over the crystalline structures scattered throughout the cavern. The formations sparkled like diamonds, refracting the light of the bioluminescent flora into countless dazzling patterns. The crystalline spires stretched toward the cavern's high ceiling, some branching out like trees of glass. It was a sight so mesmerizing that, for a brief moment, the trials they had faced seemed to fade into insignificance. Serena floated nearby, her expression both awed and contemplative. "This place," she murmured, her voice carrying through the water, "is a sanctuary of the reef's magic. But such beauty is never without purpose. We must be cautious. This cavern holds more than just its allure." Her words brought Adrian back to focus. The cavern was not merely a respite but a part of the challenges ahead, and its secrets awaited their discovery. Their moment of wonder was abruptly interrupted as the tranquil beauty of the cavern gave way to an ominous presence. From the dim recesses of the underwater chamber, ethereal figures began to materialize. These creatures, a fusion of jellyfish and serpent-like elegance, drifted forward with a hypnotic glow. Their translucent bodies pulsed with shifting patterns of light, casting dancing reflections across the crystalline walls. Each undulating movement seemed both graceful and foreboding, as if they were beings of both beauty and peril. Adrian's hand instinctively moved to the hilt of his blade, though its use underwater would be limited. "What are those?" he asked, his voice tense as he observed the creature's approach. Their glowing eyes, brimming with a peculiar intelligence, fixed on the intruders with an unsettling mix of curiosity and calculation. The air of the cavern, though devoid of actual sound, seemed to hum with a subtle, otherworldly energy as the creatures circled closer. Serena raised a hand to stop Adrian, her tone measured but urgent. "Don't provoke them. These beings are guardians of the reef's magic. They're not inherently hostile, but they will defend their domain if they sense a threat." She hovered in place, her posture calm yet alert, and motioned for Adrian to lower his weapon. "We need to show them we mean no harm. Aggression will only invite conflict." The creatures moved closer, their luminous forms creating an almost hypnotic spectacle as they studied Adrian and Serena. It was a silent standoff, the guardians assessing whether these intruders were worthy to traverse the sanctuary. Serena slowly raised her hands in a gesture of peace, her voice calm and steady as she addressed the guardians. "We come seeking understanding and passage, not destruction. We honor the reef and the magic that binds it." Her words, though carried through their communication devices, seemed to echo in the water itself, a delicate bridge of intent to the enigmatic beings before them. Serena's voice was steady as she explained, "These are reef guardians. They are ancient beings tasked with protecting the secrets of this place. Their role is to ensure that only those deemed worthy can navigate the reef's magic." Her gaze remained fixed on the creatures, their luminous bodies drifting in an almost hypnotic rhythm. The guardians radiated an air of authority, their presence a reminder that the reef was alive and intent on safeguarding its mysteries. Adrian shifted slightly, keeping his movements slow and deliberate as he observed the guardians. "How do we show them respect?" he asked, his voice low. The creatures continued their silent vigil, their glowing eyes fixed on the pair. It was as though they were weighing their intentions, probing the very essence of their presence. The tension in the water was palpable, a silent challenge from the reef itself. "We do not act with fear or hostility," Serena replied, her tone calm but firm. "The reef responds to intention, and so do its guardians. They can sense our purpose, our truth. We must show them that we are here to seek, not to take, and that our alliance is built on trust and unity." She raised her hands slightly, a gesture of peace and acknowledgement. Her movements were graceful, her respect for the guardians evident in every motion. The guardians seemed to pause, their undulating forms stilling as though considering her words. The water around them shimmered faintly, an almost imperceptible shift in the energy of the cavern. Serena remained poised, her focus unwavering. Adrian followed her lead, his earlier tension easing as he mirrored her calm demeanor. Together, they stood as allies, their mutual respect for each other and the reef's magic forming a silent testament to their intentions. The guardians' light softened, their movements becoming less deliberate, as though granting tentative approval to their presence. The guardians glided around Adrian and Serena in mesmerizing patterns, their bioluminescent bodies casting rippling light across the cavern walls. Their movements were neither hostile nor entirely welcoming, a silent dance of evaluation. Adrian held his breath, his eyes darting between the creatures and Serena, who stood calmly at his side. She began to move her hands in slow, deliberate gestures, her body language radiating respect and sincerity. Her voice, soft but firm, carried through the water, soothing and reverent as she spoke words Adrian didn't fully understand. The creatures paused, their glowing eyes fixed on Serena as though contemplating her intentions. Adrian fought the instinct to tense up, remembering her earlier advice. He mimicked her composed stance, suppressing his unease and focusing instead on the intricate beauty of the guardians. Their undulating forms seemed less alien in that moment, their movements embodying a strange grace that mirrored the rhythm of the reef itself. The water around them seemed to hum with an energy that felt almost alive, as if the reef itself was observing and deliberating. A tense silence lingered before the guardians began to shift their formation. Their circling slowed, and one by one they parted, leaving a clear path through the cavern. Serena let out a breath she had been holding, her shoulders relaxing just slightly. "They've accepted us," she murmured, her voice tinged with relief. Her gaze flicked to Adrian, who nodded, the weight of the moment settling in. It was not a victory born of force or cleverness, but of humility and understanding, a lesson the reef seemed intent on teaching. As the guardians drifted back into the shadows, their lights dimming to a faint glow, Adrian and Serena exchanged a brief, resolute glance. They moved forward, the path now open before them, their bond reinforced by the shared trial. The experience left Adrian with a deeper appreciation for Serena's connection to the reef and for the power of the alliance they had forged. The journey ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time, Adrian felt a glimmer of confidence in their ability to navigate the challenges together. As they ventured deeper into the reef, the passageways became increasingly treacherous. Before them loomed a shimmering, iridescent barrier, stretching across their path like a celestial veil. The web-like structure glimmered with an array of colors, shifting and pulsing as though alive. Serena approached it cautiously, her keen eyes narrowing in concentration as she examined the intricacies of the magical obstruction. Tiny runes floated within the barrier, their patterns twisting and rearranging with a rhythm that seemed almost musical. Adrian hung back slightly, watching her work while keeping an eye on their surroundings. "This isn't just a physical barrier," Serena murmured, her voice thoughtful as she reached out to trace the runes without touching them. "It's an enchantment, a test, perhaps. The magic woven here is ancient, designed to challenge the mind and spirit rather than brute strength." Her expression shifted as understanding dawned. "We'll need to decipher its patterns, find the harmony within its design, to pass through." Adrian stepped closer, peering at the runes and the kaleidoscopic shimmer of the barrier. "Harmony? What does that mean in this context? Are we looking for some kind of code?" His voice was steady, but his furrowed brow betrayed his unease. The reef had already proven unpredictable, and the idea of a sentient challenge unsettled him. Serena tilted her head, considering his question before responding. "Not a code, exactly. Think of it as a melody," Serena explained, her fingers hovering over the shifting runes. "We must align our energies, our intentions, with the magic of the reef. It requires balance and focus. Work with me." Adrian nodded, setting aside his doubts as he stepped closer. Together, they concentrated on the barrier, their combined efforts seeking the resonance needed to dissolve the obstruction. The runes began to slow their frantic dance, responding to their synchronized movements, until the shimmering veil flickered and then dissolved, revealing the path ahead. "This is a protective enchantment," Serena said, her tone calm but focused as her eyes scanned the intricate web of glowing magic. "It's not designed to harm but to test. We need to solve the puzzle to pass through." She stepped closer to the barrier, the iridescent hues reflecting on her face. Tiny, shifting runes floated within the enchantment, each one pulsating in rhythm with an unseen energy. Serena's fingers hovered over the shimmering patterns as she studied their movements, her brows furrowed in concentration. Adrian watched from beside her, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "What kind of puzzle are we dealing with?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. "Is it like the labyrinth we just escaped?" His eyes traced the runes, trying to make sense of their ever-changing forms. The barrier seemed alive, responding subtly to their presence as though waiting for them to act. He couldn't shake the feeling that the reef itself was observing them, testing their worthiness. "This one is different," Serena replied, her voice thoughtful. "It's not about navigation but alignment. These runes represent the energies of the reef, its harmony, its balance. We must figure out how to align our actions with its rhythm." She glanced at Adrian, her gaze steady. "It requires a calm mind and a willingness to listen to the magic itself. If we force it or approach it with the wrong intent, it will resist us." Adrian nodded, stepping closer to stand beside her. "Then we work together," he said firmly. "What do we need to do?" Serena gave a small nod of approval before extending her hand toward the barrier, her movements deliberate and precise. She guided Adrian through the process, teaching him how to mimic the subtle gestures that interacted with the runes. Together, they worked in unison, their focus aligning with the rhythm of the reef's magic. Slowly, the barrier began to shift, its vibrant colors softening and dissolving like mist, revealing the path forward. They exchanged a glance of mutual respect, their bond strengthened by their shared triumph. The barrier shimmered with an ethereal glow, its surface adorned with intricate symbols and runes that shifted as if alive. Each rune pulsed with a faint light, their patterns changing with a rhythm that seemed almost sentient. Serena stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she studied the shifting symbols. "These runes are part of an enchantment puzzle," she murmured, her voice steady yet focused. Her fingers hovered over the barrier, tracing the delicate lines of the symbols as she began to decipher their meaning. The runes pulsed brighter as if reacting to her touch, and Serena paused, letting the magic guide her intuition. Adrian stood beside her, his gaze flickering between the barrier and Serena's concentrated expression. "What do they mean?" he asked, his mind racing to piece together the puzzle. He noticed how the runes seemed to flow in patterns, some connecting while others repelled each other like magnetic forces. "It looks like they're responding to each other," he added, pointing to a section where two symbols briefly merged and emitted a brighter glow. The interaction reminded him of constellations shifting in the night sky, each star part of a larger, unseen design. Serena nodded, acknowledging his observation. "Exactly," she said, her voice tinged with admiration for his quick thinking. "These symbols represent the elements of the reef's magic, balance, harmony, and intent. We need to arrange them in a way that aligns with the reef's energy. If we misstep, the barrier could grow stronger or react unpredictably." Her fingers moved more confidently now, rearranging the glowing symbols with careful precision. Each adjustment brought a subtle change in the barrier's hum, a soft resonance filling the water around them as if the reef itself was testing their understanding. Adrian leaned in, his own instincts kicking in as he pointed to another section. "Try connecting those two," he suggested, noting a pattern he hadn't seen before. Serena hesitated for a brief moment before following his lead, her movements deliberate. As the runes aligned into a coherent design, the barrier's glow intensified, then softened, dissolving into a cascade of light. The path beyond was revealed, a new passage shimmering with promise. Adrian and Serena exchanged a look of triumph, their teamwork having unraveled the enchantment. For a moment, they stood in shared silence, the gravity of their progress and their growing bond underscored by the shimmering light of the reef. As the final piece of the barrier's puzzle clicked into place, the shimmering wall dissolved into a cascade of light, disappearing into the water like glittering rain. Adrian and Serena exhaled deeply, the tension in their shoulders easing as they stepped forward. What awaited them on the other side was a breathtaking grotto, its waters bathed in the soft glow of enchanted crystals embedded in the walls and ceiling. The crystals pulsed gently with hues of blue, lavender, and gold, casting an ethereal light that danced across the grotto's surface. It was a stark contrast to the challenges they had just faced, as if the reef was offering them a moment of reprieve. The water was impossibly clear, revealing a carpet of soft, luminescent algae on the grotto's floor. Small, glowing fish darted through the water, their movements adding to the enchanting scene. The grotto's hum was low and steady, resonating in their chests like a heartbeat and creating an atmosphere of serenity. Adrian let out a low whistle of awe. "It's like the reef has a soul," he said, his voice hushed as if speaking too loudly might disturb the tranquility around them. Serena stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the crystalline structures that seemed to grow organically from the stone. "This place is alive with magic," she said softly, her voice tinged with reverence. "The reef isn't just a physical entity, it's a living, breathing being. This grotto feels like its heart, a sanctuary where its energy gathers and renews itself." She knelt by the edge of the water, dipping her hand in. The glowing algae shimmered at her touch, as though recognizing her presence. Serena turned back to Adrian, her expression calm yet resolute. "This place is a gift, but it's also a reminder of the responsibility we carry." Adrian nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle over him like the hum of the grotto itself. "We've earned this moment," he said, his tone thoughtful as he gazed at the glowing crystals. "But it's not the end. The reef is giving us a chance to regroup, to prepare ourselves for what's next." He stepped to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Let's not waste it." Serena met his gaze, and in that quiet exchange, they found a shared resolve. Though the grotto offered peace, they knew it was only a pause in the journey, and the trials ahead would demand every ounce of strength and unity they could muster. Serena stood at the edge of the luminous water, her voice tinged with both relief and awe as she spoke. "This grotto is a place of rest and reflection," she said, her words soft but resolute. "We've navigated the first series of challenges. The reef is testing us, but we're making progress." Her gaze swept over the glowing crystals and the tranquil waters, the soft hum of the grotto seeming to echo her sentiments. There was a gentleness here that contrasted sharply with the chaos they had faced before, as though the reef acknowledged their efforts and granted them this moment of peace. Adrian stood beside her, his arms crossed as he surveyed their surroundings. "A place like this doesn't just happen," he mused. "It's deliberate, part of the reef's design. It wants us to reflect on what we've learned so far, to regroup before moving forward." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the weight of the trials ahead. He glanced at Serena, his respect for her growing with every step of their journey. "You've been right about the reef at every turn. It's alive in ways I couldn't have imagined, and it's clear it's not just testing our strength. It's testing our purpose." Serena met his gaze, her expression thoughtful. "The reef's magic is ancient, and its trials are meant to reveal not just who we are, but who we could become," she said. "It's not just a physical journey, it's a transformation. Every obstacle we face forces us to adapt, to trust in each other, and to discover strengths we didn't know we had." Her voice carried a quiet conviction, as though she had begun to understand the deeper purpose behind their mission. "This grotto is proof that the reef acknowledges our progress, even if the hardest challenges are still ahead." For a moment, they both stood in silence, absorbing the meaning of Serena's words and the serene beauty of their surroundings. The grotto's gentle hum seemed to resonate in their chests, a reminder of the living magic that surrounded them. Adrian finally broke the silence, his tone lighter but no less sincere. "Then we'll take this moment for what it is, a chance to catch our breath and steel ourselves for what's next." He glanced toward the shimmering exit of the grotto, the faint current beyond hinting at the challenges that awaited. "When we leave this place, we'll be ready. Whatever the reef throws at us next, we'll face it together." Adrian leaned against a nearby crystal formation, taking a moment to steady his breathing and gather his thoughts. His chest rose and fell with measured determination as he spoke, his voice low but firm. "This place is incredible," he said, his eyes scanning the glowing grotto with equal parts awe and caution. "But it's also clear that the reef won't make our journey easy." The serenity of the grotto was a stark contrast to the chaotic maze they had just navigated, yet Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that this brief reprieve was only a pause before the next storm. The reef, for all its beauty, was a gauntlet designed to test every fiber of their resolve. Serena nodded in agreement, her expression thoughtful as she gazed into the tranquil waters. "The reef is alive with purpose," she said, her voice tinged with respect for the ancient magic surrounding them. "Every challenge it presents is deliberate. It's not just testing our strength or courage, it's testing our ability to adapt, to think critically, and to trust in each other." She turned to face Adrian, her gaze steady. "The moment we let our guard down, it will find a way to exploit our weaknesses. We have to remain vigilant, not just against the dangers we can see, but the ones we can't anticipate." Adrian ran a hand through his damp hair, the weight of her words settling over him. "You're right," he said, his tone reflective. "We've made it this far because we've worked together, because we've trusted each other even when the path ahead was uncertain. But that trust has to stay unshaken, especially when things get harder." He straightened, his resolve hardening as he glanced toward the shimmering exit of the grotto. "We can't afford to let this moment of peace lull us into a false sense of security. The reef is testing not just our skills but our commitment to this mission." The glow of the grotto seemed to intensify for a brief moment, as if affirming their shared determination. Serena stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on Adrian's arm. "Then let this place remind us of why we're here," she said, her voice steady. "The challenges ahead will be difficult, but they're not impossible. Together, we have the strength to face whatever comes next." Her words carried a quiet conviction, grounding Adrian in the gravity of their shared purpose. As they turned toward the exit, their resolve was renewed, each step a silent vow to meet the reef's trials with unwavering determination. Serena's gaze hardened as she surveyed the glowing grotto, her eyes reflecting the gravity of their mission. "Indeed," she said, her voice steady but laced with the weight of responsibility. "The reef is full of magic and mystery. It's alive in ways that we don't fully understand, and each trial it presents will test us in different ways." She took a deep breath, her fingers gently brushing the smooth surface of one of the enchanted crystals surrounding them. "But no matter what challenges we face, we will face them together. Our strength lies in our unity, and that is the only way we will unlock the secrets of this place." Adrian watched her with a sense of admiration. There was a quiet fire in Serena's words, a conviction that bolstered his own resolve. "The reef's power is vast," he said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty lingering in his chest. "But we've already overcome so much. We've navigated treacherous currents, solved puzzles, and faced creatures that guarded the way. We're not the same as when we first set foot in this place. We've grown stronger, individually and as a team." He paused, turning his eyes toward the shimmering expanse beyond the grotto. "I believe we can break the curse. Together, we're unstoppable." Serena nodded in agreement, her eyes following his gaze to the shifting waters ahead. Breaking the curse is not just about confronting the trials, it's about understanding the reef itself. Each step we take brings us closer to its heart, to the ancient magic that binds it together. The answers we seek are hidden within its depths, waiting for us to find them. She exhaled slowly, the weight of the prophecy settling upon her shoulders. "I can feel the magic growing stronger, pushing us forward. It won't be easy, but the stakes are too high to turn back now." The sense of purpose between them was palpable, and with each word exchanged, their bond seemed to grow even stronger. Adrian placed a hand on the railing beside them, the motion deliberate. "Then let's keep moving," he said, determination flaring in his eyes. "We'll uncover the secrets of the reef, break the curse, and whatever else lies ahead, we'll do it together." Serena's smile was a small but powerful acknowledgement of their shared goal. They stood side by side, prepared to face whatever challenges the reef would throw their way, knowing that their alliance and trust in each other would be the key to their success. As they rested in the tranquil grotto, the soft hum of the enchanted crystals was a soothing contrast to the intensity of their journey so far. The air felt thick with magic, each breath a reminder of the unknowns that still lay ahead. Adrian sat on a large, smooth stone near the water's edge, his thoughts drifting between the challenges they had already faced and the trials yet to come. Serena stood by the water, her reflection rippling in the shimmering surface, lost in contemplation. Both knew that the magical reef was far from forgiving, its depths filled with secrets both wondrous and perilous. The trials that had tested their strength, intellect, and resolve thus far were only the beginning, and the true extent of what awaited them remained shrouded in mystery. The reef, with its ever-shifting landscapes and unpredictable enchantments, seemed to hold its breath as if watching them. Its coral spires reached toward the surface like ancient sentinels, while the waters below concealed creatures and powers beyond human understanding. Serena could feel the weight of the prophecy pressing on her, the knowledge that every step they took in this magical realm could bring them closer to either salvation or ruin. Yet, despite the uncertainty, there was a strange sense of wonder within her. The reef was alive in a way no other place had ever been, and she couldn't help but marvel at the beauty and complexity of its magic, even as she prepared to face its dangers. Adrian, on the other hand, couldn't help but feel a twinge of anxiety, the weight of their mission heavy on his shoulders. Though he had faced numerous dangers in his life, this journey was unlike any he had ever undertaken. The trials they would encounter in these waters were unlike any battlefield he had known. Yet, as he looked over at Serena, he found a deep sense of reassurance in their alliance. She had proven herself capable and resolute, and together, they had already overcome so much. Their shared goal to break the curse and unlock the secrets of the reef was the driving force behind their every action. With her by his side, he was ready to face the unknown, trusting in their partnership and the strength they had found in each other. The night air grew still, and the reef seemed to settle around them as they gathered their gear and prepared to move on. There was no turning back now. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges that would test their limits, but they were no longer uncertain about the strength of their bond. Together, they would navigate the reef's magic, face whatever trials came their way, and break the curse that had long bound Serena to this enchanted place. As Adrian stood and joined Serena at the water's edge, they shared a silent moment of understanding, knowing that the journey ahead would demand everything they had, but also knowing they were ready. With renewed determination and a strengthened alliance, they dove once more into the depths, ready to face whatever awaited them in the uncharted waters of the magical reef. Chapter 13: The First Challenge. The enchanted grotto, with its gentle luminescence, seemed like a sanctuary, a brief haven from the dangers and uncertainties of the reef. The soft glow of the magical crystals reflected off the water's surface, casting ripples of light that danced across the walls of the cavern. Adrian and Serena, still adjusting to the serenity of their surroundings, took a moment to absorb the quiet beauty of the place. The air, cool and refreshing, carried with it the faint scent of salt water and something uniquely otherworldly. It was as if the grotto itself was holding its breath, allowing them a brief reprieve before the true challenges of their journey would unfold. Serena stood at the water's edge, her gaze fixed on the path that lay beyond the grotto's boundaries. The tranquil hum of the crystals reverberated in the air, offering a soothing contrast to the storm that brewed within her. She knew, deep down, that the peacefulness of the grotto was but a fleeting moment. It was only a temporary reprieve before the next trial would begin. The reef had tested their physical endurance, but she sensed that the deeper trials ahead would challenge their very spirits. The prophecies had been clear about the nature of the trials they would face: courage, wisdom, and sacrifice. But the true weight of those challenges was still to be revealed. Adrian stood beside her, his mind racing with a mix of apprehension and determination. His eyes scanned the edges of the grotto, where the walls seemed to pulse with the ebb and flow of unseen magic. He could feel the pulse of the reef, the raw power that coursed beneath the surface, waiting to reveal its mysteries. They had already come so far, surviving the shifting currents and the labyrinthine passages, but he knew that the hardest part of their journey was yet to come. The feeling of unease that had settled in his chest since entering the reef had not dissipated. If anything, it had grown stronger, fed by the knowledge that each step forward would bring them closer to unknown trials that could very well break them. But as Adrian glanced at Serena, he found solace in her presence. She had been his anchor, her calm resolve a steadying force when the journey had seemed most perilous. Her deep connection to the magic of the reef, her understanding of its mysteries, had guided them so far, and he knew that her strength would carry them through whatever came next. The trials they faced were designed to test their resolve, to forge them into something stronger, but Adrian believed in their partnership. Together, they had faced each challenge, and together, they would face whatever the reef had in store. Serena turned toward him, her expression serious but filled with quiet resolve. "We can rest here for a moment longer, but we can't afford to linger. The reef is waiting, and the trials will not wait for us to be ready." Adrian nodded, his mind finally settling into a state of readiness. With the calmness of the grotto still surrounding them, they made their decision. They would press on. The next chapter of their journey awaited them, and with their alliance stronger than ever, they were prepared to face whatever trials lay ahead in the depths of the magical reef. Serena moved with quiet confidence, her every step deliberate as she guided Adrian through the winding corridors of the grotto. The walls, lined with bioluminescent flora, seemed to pulse with a quiet rhythm, as though the very rock was alive with magic. The cool, damp air carried the scent of earth and salt water, and the soft echo of their footsteps was the only sound in the stillness. The weight of the prophecy hung heavily on their minds, each word a reminder of the trials they were about to face. The cryptic warning about courage, wisdom, and sacrifice lingered in the air, fueling both their resolve and their anxiety. As they moved deeper into the grotto, the narrow passageways began to twist and bend in ways that defied logic. The walls seemed to shift ever so slightly, and every turn they took revealed another passage, sometimes leading them in unexpected directions. The path ahead was unclear, as if the very grotto were testing their ability to stay true to their purpose. Serena's gaze never wavered, her focus sharp as she scanned the surroundings for any sign of danger or clue. She could feel the reef's magic growing stronger with each step, its energy flowing around them like a living entity. The deeper they went, the more the air seemed to hum with power, as if the grotto itself was aware of their presence. Adrian stayed close behind, his eyes scanning the passageways with a mix of awe and caution. He had grown accustomed to the dangers of the sea, but the reef was something entirely different. It was alive, ancient, and full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. The barrier they had encountered earlier, the shimmering wall of runes and symbols, had been only a glimpse of the reef's true power. Serena's explanation of the enchantments had given him some understanding, but he still felt a sense of unease. Every step they took seemed to bring them closer to the unknown, and yet, he felt a strange pull, an unexplainable connection to the place, as though the reef itself had chosen them for this journey. They came to a sudden stop as the passage widened into a small chamber. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, and the faint glow of distant crystals illuminated the space in a soft, otherworldly light. Serena's hand instinctively reached for Adrian's arm, a silent signal for caution. The floor of the chamber was covered in smooth stones, and the walls were lined with strange, shifting symbols that flickered in and out of existence. Adrian could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up as he realized that this was no ordinary place. This was a place of power, a point of convergence in the reef's intricate web of magic. Serena took a step forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the symbols on the walls. "We're close," she said, her voice low and steady. "The first trial is near. We'll need to work together to solve it. The reef will test us here, but we must trust in our strength and our bond." Adrian nodded, feeling a surge of determination rise within him. The reef had tested their resolve in small ways already, but this was the moment that would truly challenge them. The prophecy's warning echoed in his mind once more, but this time, he felt ready. With Serena by his side, he knew they could face whatever the reef had in store. As Adrian and Serena made their way deeper into the heart of the reef, the shifting sounds of the underwater world faded, replaced by a tense silence. The air around them seemed to thrum with energy, and the deeper they went, the more they felt the weight of the magic pressing in from all sides. They arrived at a vast, circular chamber, the stone floor glowing faintly under the light of enchanted crystals embedded in the walls. The room's scale was daunting, its high ceiling lost in shadows, and the air felt thick with a sense of anticipation. Serena's eyes narrowed, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "We've reached the first trial," she said, her voice calm but laced with the weight of what they were about to face. Her words sent a shiver down Adrian's spine, the realization that they were now entering the true heart of the reef settling in. The chamber before them was not just an obstacle, it was a place where their resolve and partnership would be tested. At the center of the room was a shimmering magical barrier, a barrier that seemed to pulse with life. Its surface rippled like water disturbed by a gentle breeze, glowing with a spectrum of colors that shifted and swirled in a mesmerizing dance. Serena stepped forward, her expression one of focus as she examined the magical barrier closely. "This is a test of our cooperation," she explained, her voice steady despite the challenge that lay before them. "The reef's magic thrives on balance. We must work together in perfect harmony to pass. If we fail to align our wills, we will be trapped here." Adrian's eyes followed Serena's every movement, trying to make sense of the enchantment before them. The barrier was not simply a wall to break through. It was an obstacle that required more than just force. It demanded unity, trust, and a shared purpose. Adrian took a deep breath, his mind racing as he considered the weight of Serena's words. He had faced countless dangers in his time, but this was different. This was a trial that demanded more than skill or knowledge. It called for an unspoken connection between them, one that he hadn't fully realized was necessary until this very moment. He moved to stand beside her, his posture mirroring hers, and reached out to connect with the energy of the reef. His senses sharpened as he felt the pulse of magic swirling around them, waiting for the right moment to act. Serena's hand moved slowly toward the barrier, tracing the intricate symbols that shimmered across its surface. Adrian followed her lead, extending his energy to match hers, allowing the currents of magic to flow between them. At first, nothing happened. The barrier remained unyielding, its light pulsing softly in response to their efforts. But with every passing moment, the air between them grew heavier, as if the reef itself was testing their strength, their patience, and their resolve. Adrian's breath caught in his chest as the barrier seemed to fight back, an invisible force pulling at their every movement. They were locked in a silent battle, pushing against the barrier with every ounce of strength and magic they possessed. Then, just as doubt began to creep into Adrian's mind, something shifted. A subtle connection formed between him and Serena, their energies aligning in a way that felt natural, as though they had always been meant to work together. The barrier's resistance lessened, and the colors of its glow began to shift, blending into a soft, calming light. With a final push, the magic gave way, and the barrier dissolved into the air, leaving nothing but a faint ripple of energy behind. The silence that followed was almost deafening, but in it, they could feel the weight of their success. They had passed the first trial, not with brute force, but with the strength of their partnership. Serena turned to Adrian, a rare smile playing at the corners of her lips. "We did it," she said softly, her voice carrying the relief of their shared triumph. Adrian returned her smile, the feeling of accomplishment settling deep within him. They had proven that they could face the challenges ahead together, and though the journey was far from over, they now had the confidence to continue. With the first trial behind them, the path forward seemed a little less daunting, and for the first time in a long while, Adrian believed that they might just have a chance to uncover the secrets of the reef and break the curse that bound them. The chamber they entered was unlike any they had encountered so far. The air hummed with a palpable energy, and the atmosphere felt thick with the weight of ancient magic. At the heart of the chamber stood an imposing barrier of shimmering energy, its presence dominating the space. The barrier was alive, its surface undulating in a constant, mesmerizing dance of swirling light and shadow. The colors within it shifted in complex patterns, glowing and fading like a heartbeat, each pulse sending ripples through the air. It was as though the barrier was watching them, aware of their every move, a living entity that held the key to their next step. As Adrian and Serena stepped closer, the power of the barrier became more apparent. It wasn't simply a wall to break through, but a challenge to their very will. The magical force emanating from it was both beautiful and intimidating, its rhythms entrancing, yet carrying an underlying warning. The symbols within the shifting patterns seemed to shift as well, almost too quickly for Adrian's eyes to follow. The more he stared at it, the more he felt as though the barrier was actively testing him, probing for weaknesses. It was clear that this was no ordinary enchantment, but something far older and more complex. Something that would require more than just brute force to overcome. In the center of the barrier, resting atop a pedestal of translucent crystal, was an inscription. The pedestal itself seemed to glow with a soft inner light, casting reflections across the walls. The inscription was written in an ancient script, one that Serena recognized immediately. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the etched symbols, her lips moving silently as she read through them. With a deep breath, she placed her hand upon the crystal pedestal, her fingers tracing the delicate grooves in the stone. The cool surface of the pedestal seemed to hum beneath her touch, resonating with the energy of the barrier itself. Serena's voice broke the silence, steady and firm as she read the inscription aloud. "To pass the trials and unlock the path beyond, you must align your hearts and minds in unity. Only then will the barrier yield." Her words echoed through the chamber, bouncing off the walls and filling the space with a profound sense of weight. The inscription seemed to glow brighter as she spoke, the patterns in the barrier shifting in response to her voice. The air around them vibrated, and for a moment, it felt as though the entire reef held its breath. Adrian glanced at Serena, his mind racing. The message was clear. This was not just a physical trial, but one that would test their connection and their ability to work as one. Adrian felt a knot of uncertainty form in his stomach. The inscription's meaning was not lost on him. It wasn't enough to simply fight through the barrier or find a way around it. They had to come together as allies, as partners, and synchronize their wills. The challenges they had faced up until this point had pushed them to trust each other, but this was different. The reef demanded that they go beyond mere cooperation. It required a bond, a deeper connection that transcended the physical and mental. As Serena turned to face him, her gaze steady and filled with resolve, Adrian knew that the success of their journey depended on how well they could meet this new challenge, not just together, but as one. Serena's voice rang clear as she translated the inscription aloud, her words reverberating through the chamber, amplifying the weight of their meaning. "To pass through this barrier, you must prove your unity and resolve," she said, her eyes scanning the shifting patterns of light and shadow that danced across the energy barrier. "The barrier will challenge your determination and the strength of your bond." The words hung in the air like a solemn declaration, carrying with them a sense of foreboding. The realization settled in that they were not only facing a physical obstacle but something far deeper, an invisible force that would demand more than their strength or skill alone. As the last echo of her voice faded, the barrier before them seemed to pulse more strongly, its colors flickering in response, as if it had understood the challenge they now faced. The swirling lights became more intense, twisting in intricate patterns, almost hypnotic in their beauty. It was as though the barrier itself was alive, watching them, assessing them, testing them before they could advance. The energy it exuded was thick with magic, its very presence pressing in on them, urging them to understand that this was not merely an obstacle to be overcome, but a lesson to be learned. The air seemed to grow heavier, as though the chamber itself held its breath, awaiting their next move. Serena stood motionless for a moment, her gaze locked on the barrier as her mind raced to process the challenge. "It's not just about breaking through," she murmured, almost to herself, her voice barely audible. "We need to be in perfect harmony, our minds and hearts aligned, or the barrier will remain." She turned to Adrian, her expression serious but resolute. "We must prove that our bond is stronger than any force that might divide us." Adrian's stomach tightened, the weight of her words sinking in. This was not just a matter of navigating the physical dangers of the reef. The very foundation of their partnership would be tested here. Adrian glanced at Serena, trying to understand the depth of what was being asked of them. The trials they had already faced had challenged their trust and their resolve, but this was something new, something intangible. It wasn't just about cooperating, it was about proving that they could act as one, moving in perfect synchronicity, with no room for doubt or hesitation. They had already relied on each other's strengths, but now they would need to merge those strengths into something greater than the sum of their parts. The notion felt daunting, but Adrian knew that they had no choice but to try. With a deep breath, Adrian stepped forward, his eyes locking with Serena's. "We've come this far," he said, his voice steady, though a flicker of uncertainty lingered in his chest. "We can face this challenge together, like we always have." Serena's gaze softened as she met his eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. There was no room for doubt now, only unity. They had been through countless trials, but this one would demand something more. Their connection, their bond, would be tested to its very core. But in that moment, standing before the pulsing barrier, they both understood that this was the final step. To move forward, they would have to face their greatest challenge yet, the strength of their unity. Adrian stepped forward cautiously, his eyes narrowing as he observed the barrier before him. Its surface shimmered with an ethereal light, patterns of radiant energy swirling in hypnotic spirals. Each flicker of color seemed to dance in perfect synchronization with the pulse of the barrier, its rhythm both mesmerizing and unnerving. He could feel the weight of the challenge pressing down on him, the air thick with magical energy. Every instinct told him that this was no ordinary obstacle. They weren't just facing an enchanted wall. They were standing before something far deeper, a manifestation of the reef's magic, designed to test not just their skills, but their very connection. As he moved closer, the barrier seemed to respond to his presence, its colors shifting in subtle waves. The closer Adrian came, the more alive it felt, as if it were aware of his every movement. He glanced over at Serena, who stood beside him, her gaze unwavering. She was calm, her focus sharp, yet he could see the weight of the moment in her eyes. This wasn't just about passing through. It was about proving something greater, something about their partnership, their ability to work as one. He could feel the pressure mounting, and though the air around them hummed with quiet magic, it felt like the world itself had fallen silent in anticipation of their next move. Turning back to the barrier, Adrian's brow furrowed in concentration. "How do we begin?" he asked, his voice carrying the uncertainty of the moment. He had faced many challenges before, but this felt different. The barrier before them wasn't just a puzzle to be solved with physical force or clever tricks. It was a test of unity, of their ability to trust in each other completely. He knew that breaking through it wasn't about understanding the magic itself, but about aligning their hearts, their minds, and their spirits. It was a task that would require more than just skill. It would demand vulnerability, trust, and absolute harmony. Serena took a step closer to the shimmering barrier, her movements measured and deliberate. "We begin by trusting in each other," she replied, her voice steady but laced with a quiet intensity. "The barrier will only respond to our combined strength, to our unity. We need to synchronize our thoughts and actions, allow our bond to guide us." She met his gaze, the depth of their shared understanding clear in her eyes. It wasn't just a matter of physical proximity. It was a matter of merging their intentions and energies, becoming one in purpose and in resolve. For a brief moment, Adrian felt the enormity of the challenge. They had fought side by side through countless trials, but this one felt like it would define everything. Taking a steadying breath, Adrian nodded, his resolve firming. He extended his hand to Serena, their fingers brushing lightly, a subtle yet profound gesture. "Then let's do it," he said, his voice unwavering now. There was no more room for hesitation, no more time for doubts. This was the moment that would prove the strength of their partnership. Together, they would face the barrier, not as two individuals, but as one force united by trust and purpose. As their hands clasped, a sudden rush of energy surged between them, the barrier's rhythm matching the beat of their hearts. It was as if the reef itself was waiting, sensing their determination, ready to see if their bond could overcome the trial before them. The air around them crackled with anticipation as they prepared to take the first step toward breaking through. Serena's eyes scanned the chamber with a practiced gaze, taking in every detail. The walls, etched with ancient runes and symbols, glimmered faintly under the soft light of the shimmering barrier. Her fingers brushed against the cold stone, feeling the subtle vibrations that pulsed through the air, like a faint heartbeat emanating from the very depths of the reef. She knew this was more than just a physical puzzle. It was a test of perception, of finding the hidden threads that connected them to the magic of the place. The barrier before them was alive with energy, a manifestation of the reef's will, and it would only yield to those who could unlock its secrets. Serena's mind raced as she processed the inscription on the crystal pedestal, her lips moving silently as she translated the ancient text in her mind. "The trial requires us to work together to unlock the barrier," she murmured, more to herself than to Adrian. Her eyes darted back to the room, her focus narrowing as she examined the space. The chamber itself felt alive, its walls seemingly breathing with the pulse of the barrier, each shift of light a hint towards something hidden just beneath the surface. She stepped away from the pedestal and turned slowly, her gaze flicking to every corner, every shadow, every crevice. "There are likely clues or mechanisms hidden within the chamber that we must find and activate." Her voice was steady, but the weight of the task ahead was clear in her tone. This trial wasn't something that could be solved with brute force or quick thinking alone. It was a test of patience, observation, and teamwork. Adrian stood beside her, his gaze following the same path, his brow furrowing as he, too, sought any sign of a mechanism that could reveal the key to unlocking the barrier. The air was thick with the scent of salt water and magic, and the quiet hum of the barrier seemed to intensify the deeper they ventured into the chamber. As his eyes moved over the runes and symbols, Adrian couldn't help but feel the immense responsibility that lay on their shoulders. They had come so far together, and now, with the barrier before them, they would have to rely on each other's strengths and abilities more than ever before. He knew Serena was capable, but this trial would test them both, stretching their trust and bond to their limits. He turned to her, meeting her gaze. "Where should we start?" Adrian's voice was calm, but there was an edge of uncertainty beneath the surface. He could feel the pressure mounting, the weight of the prophecy bearing down on him. This was the first true trial they had encountered in the reef, and if they failed here, everything they had worked for so far would have been for nothing. His mind raced, but he knew that rashness would only hinder their progress. Patience, observation, and trust would be their guiding lights. They had to work together to decipher the clues that lay hidden, and each move had to be deliberate, calculated. Serena nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Let's start with the runes," she suggested, stepping toward the walls where intricate carvings decorated the stone. She traced the symbols lightly with her fingers, feeling the energy that pulsed through them as she moved from one to the next. "These may be more than just decoration. They could hold the key to understanding the barrier's magic." She paused for a moment, her eyes meeting Adrian's. "We'll need to decode them, but we must be careful. The reef is full of magic, and some of these symbols may be traps or illusions meant to mislead us." She inhaled deeply, her focus narrowing as she prepared to dive deeper into the mystery of the trial. This was a challenge unlike any they had faced before, and it would demand every ounce of their combined intellect and strength. The chamber was bathed in the soft, shifting glow of the barrier, casting long shadows that stretched across the walls. The runes and symbols etched into the stone were intricate, flowing, and interconnected in a web-like pattern that seemed to pulse with an energy all its own. Each symbol seemed to be part of a larger whole, but their meaning was unclear, fragmented pieces of a puzzle that neither Adrian nor Serena could yet comprehend. The air was thick with magic, and every step they took seemed to deepen the sense of mystery surrounding the trial. The stone beneath their feet felt cold and ancient, as if the chamber had existed long before their arrival, waiting for someone worthy to decipher its secrets. The barrier in the center of the room hummed softly, its shifting colors and patterns casting an ever-changing light on the walls, making it difficult to focus on any one symbol for long. Adrian's eyes narrowed as he studied the carvings, his mind racing to make connections between them. The symbols seemed familiar, though he couldn't place them. They were ancient, clearly tied to the magic of the reef, but their meanings eluded him. He reached out, running his fingers gently over one of the symbols, feeling a slight pulse of energy ripple through the stone. "It's like they're alive," he muttered, glancing at Serena. "They respond to touch, but they're not revealing anything easily." Serena, her expression focused and serious, nodded in agreement. She stepped forward, her hand hovering over the stone as she traced the edges of another symbol, her fingers moving slowly, deliberately. "They're part of a greater whole," she said quietly, "but they don't make sense yet. We'll have to decipher them one by one." They worked in silence, their movements synchronized, each of them studying the symbols from different angles. As they explored the hidden corners of the chamber, they found more runes and carvings, each one seemingly placed with purpose, but no pattern emerged immediately. The walls were covered in them, some etched deep into the stone, others faint, almost worn away by time. Serena bent down to examine a faint set of runes near the base of one wall, her eyes scanning the delicate carvings. "These symbols are newer," she observed, her fingers brushing over them. "They might be the key to unlocking the rest of the puzzle." Adrian crouched beside her, his brow furrowed in concentration. He could see the subtle differences in the way these runes had been etched, newer, fresher, as though they had been added after the others were already in place. "Perhaps they're a guide," he suggested. "A map of sorts, showing us the way forward." They began to piece together the symbols, Serena leading the charge with her understanding of ancient magic. Adrian's mind was sharp, but his understanding of these symbols was limited. He relied heavily on Serena's expertise, trusting her knowledge of the reef's magic. With each symbol they deciphered, the barrier before them seemed to respond, its pulsing energy growing more intense, as if testing their progress. Adrian could feel the weight of the trial pressing on them. The sense of urgency was palpable. This trial was not just a test of intellect, but of their bond. If they failed to understand the language of the reef, they would be trapped in this chamber, separated from the secrets they sought. Finally, after what felt like hours of searching and decoding, Serena's hand stopped over a group of runes etched along a central pillar. "These," she said, her voice tinged with certainty. "These are the key." Adrian leaned in, watching as she traced the runes with her fingers. The symbols began to glow faintly, responding to her touch. "It's a sequence," she murmured. "A pattern we've been missing. We need to activate them in the right order." Adrian nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. With a steady breath, they began to work in unison, activating the runes one by one. As the final symbol lit up, a burst of light erupted from the central pillar, and the barrier before them trembled, its shimmering surface beginning to ripple and dissolve. The chamber fell into an eerie silence, the puzzle solved. They had passed the first trial. As Adrian and Serena moved through the chamber, the energy of the barrier seemed to come alive around them. With each step they took, the colors of the shimmering walls shifted, swirling into deeper hues of blue, green, and violet, as if the barrier itself was watching them, reacting to their every move. It wasn't just a simple visual transformation, each change felt like a pulse of magic, a wave of energy rippling through the air. The more they worked to decipher the runes, the more the barrier seemed to react. Its pulsations grew more intense, its surface rippling with an almost liquid-like movement, as if it were a living entity, observing their every decision. Adrian felt the weight of the magic pressing down on him, the air growing thick with an invisible tension. It was as though the barrier was testing them. Each turn they made a challenge to their resolve. Serena's hand hovered over a series of symbols, her brow furrowing in concentration. She could feel the energy building around them, a palpable force growing stronger with every correct movement. The barrier's light grew brighter as they aligned the symbols in the right order, and for a moment, she thought she could hear a low hum emanating from the barrier itself. It wasn't just a test of intellect, it felt like the reef was responding to their connection, their teamwork. She could sense the urgency in Adrian's movements as he traced the symbols with precision, his fingers brushing over the ancient runes. The more they worked, the faster the energy seemed to intensify, the pulsing rhythm of the barrier almost mirroring their own heartbeat. The pressure was mounting, but they couldn't afford to make a mistake. Every second felt like a race against the magic itself. With each new symbol they discovered, the barrier's colors shifted in response, the patterns becoming more chaotic, more erratic. Adrian's fingers brushed over a newly revealed rune, and the wall in front of them shimmered violently, the air thickening with the surge of magic. He exchanged a glance with Serena, his nerves taut as a string. There was no turning back now. They had already committed to solving this puzzle, and failure was not an option. The pulsing of the barrier grew faster, almost frantic, as though the magic inside it was growing impatient. The energy radiated outward, filling the chamber with a palpable sense of urgency that pushed them both forward. The symbols before them were no longer just marks on a wall. They were the key to survival, the only way to break through the barrier and continue their journey. Serena's voice broke through the tension, her tone steady but laced with urgency. "We're close," she said, her hand tracing the final sequence of symbols. As she spoke, the barrier responded with a sharp burst of light, its colors flaring brightly before fading back into a more subdued glow. The air crackled with power, and for a moment, Adrian thought he could feel the entire chamber holding its breath. His pulse quickened as the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Serena's fingers moved in swift, precise motions, completing the sequence. The energy in the room surged again, stronger than ever before, and the barrier's surface rippled as if it were made of water. It seemed to hesitate for a brief moment before the colors shifted into a calm, steady rhythm. As the final rune was activated, the barrier shuddered, and a soft hum filled the air. The magical energy, which had been oppressive and chaotic, now settled into a smooth, harmonious flow. Adrian and Serena stepped back, their bodies tense with anticipation as they waited to see if their efforts had paid off. Slowly, the shimmering surface of the barrier began to dissolve, its intricate patterns fading like mist. A sense of relief washed over them as the path before them opened up, the once imposing barrier now nothing more than a dissipating ripple of light. The first trial was over, but the sense of urgency remained, urging them forward as the mysteries of the reef beckoned. Hours stretched on as Adrian and Serena worked relentlessly, their minds focused on the intricate puzzle before them. The runes and symbols seemed to shift and change with each attempt, leaving them no clearer than before. With every failure, the barrier's energy grew more unpredictable, its once rhythmic pulsations now erratic and chaotic. The gentle hum that had filled the chamber earlier was now replaced with a low, unsettling growl, like the growl of a predator sensing weakness. The chamber itself seemed to respond to their frustration, the once calm atmosphere thickening with tension. The walls appeared to close in on them, the weight of the magic pressing down on their shoulders as the puzzle stubbornly resisted their every effort. Serena's brow furrowed in concentration, her fingers trailing over the symbols with growing impatience. Each rune she touched seemed to push back against her, as though the very magic of the reef was aware of their struggle. Adrian stood beside her, his gaze flicking back and forth between the glowing runes and Serena's focused face. He could feel the strain in the air, a sense of urgency building with each failed attempt. The pulsations of the barrier were no longer gentle. They were now harsh and jagged, pulsing with an energy that felt almost alive. It was as though the reef itself were testing their resolve, refusing to let them pass until they proved their worth. Adrian's muscles were tense, his mind racing with possible solutions, but every idea seemed to fall short. Their movements had become almost mechanical, each touch of their hands on the runes accompanied by the flicker of light that would soon fade into nothingness. The barrier's response to their attempts was becoming more aggressive, the colors shifting wildly with every misstep. The once beautiful interplay of light now seemed like a mocking display, taunting them with its elusive nature. A bead of sweat rolled down Serena's temple as she glanced up at the barrier's undulating surface, the frustration evident in her eyes. Adrian's jaw clenched, the strain of their failure mounting. The silence between their attempts was thick with tension, the stillness broken only by the occasional hiss of energy rippling through the chamber. The weight of the puzzle seemed to settle on their shoulders, a physical burden as much as a mental one. Time seemed to blur as they worked through endless combinations, each attempt more desperate than the last. The puzzle taunted them with its shifting patterns, the symbols refusing to align in a way that would allow them to pass. The air was thick with the electric charge of magic, and the chamber itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for them to succeed or fail. The barrier responded in unpredictable bursts of light, each failure feeling like another step backward. It was a game of endurance now, a battle against the magic of the reef itself. Adrian could feel the weight of their frustration beginning to cloud his judgment, but he forced himself to stay focused. Serena's voice, steady but tinged with a hint of exhaustion, broke through the silence. "We can't give up. We have to keep trying." After what felt like an eternity, a moment of clarity seemed to pierce the fog of frustration. As Adrian adjusted his stance, his hand brushing against the runes once more, something shifted. The symbols before them seemed to settle, the once chaotic patterns now aligning in a harmonious way. Serena's eyes widened in realization, a flicker of hope igniting within her. She quickly joined Adrian's side, her fingers moving to complete the sequence. The barrier responded almost immediately, its pulsations slowing to a steady, calming rhythm. The erratic energy that had filled the chamber dissipated, leaving behind a quiet sense of anticipation. With a final, synchronized movement, the last rune clicked into place. The barrier shimmered and then dissolved, its magic no longer a barrier but a passageway. Their persistence had paid off, and the path ahead was now open. Adrian's words echoed through the chamber, his frustration palpable as he paced in tight circles, his eyes scanning the walls once more. The symbols and runes continued to shift before them, their meanings as elusive as ever. The barrier's energy, which had been erratic just moments ago, now seemed to pulse with a more dangerous rhythm, reflecting the tension that had taken root in the chamber. The soft glow of the runes provided little comfort, their beauty now overshadowed by the looming challenge. The feeling of being on the brink of understanding, yet so far from success, gnawed at Adrian's patience. He stopped abruptly, his gaze flickering from the runes to Serena. his voice carrying a thread of frustration. "We've missed something. There's a clue we haven't found yet. Something small, something that might be hidden in plain sight." Serena, her brow furrowed in concentration, took a slow breath, letting the words settle in her mind. Her gaze swept across the chamber, lingering on the glowing symbols, each one now appearing like an unsolved riddle. "It's easy to feel lost in all of this," she said softly, her voice steady but laced with the same tension Adrian felt. The runes were intricate, their shifting nature defying easy interpretation. There had to be a pattern somewhere, a key hidden within the puzzle they had yet to see. She reached out, tracing a symbol with her fingertips, hoping to feel some subtle change, some signal that they were on the right track. Her eyes flicked to the edges of the room, where shadows stretched long across the floor. "Maybe the clue isn't in the symbols themselves, but in something else," she suggested, her voice thoughtful. "Perhaps the arrangement of the runes, or how they interact with the space around us." Adrian nodded, his mind racing as he examined the room from a different angle. The chamber, now suffused with the soft glow of magic, was silent except for the faint hum of the barrier's energy. He shifted his attention to the pedestal at the center of the room, where the inscription had first appeared. It had seemed so simple at first, but perhaps it was more than just a series of instructions. "Look at the pedestal," he said, his voice sharper now. "It's been here the entire time, and we've barely acknowledged it. Maybe the answer lies with it, or in how it relates to the symbols." He stepped forward, carefully inspecting the pedestal's surface. As his fingers brushed against it, a faint shimmer of energy sparked to life, and the pedestal seemed to hum with an ancient vibration. "It's like the pedestal is alive with magic. Could this be the missing piece?" Serena moved to join him, her eyes narrowing in scrutiny as she too studied the pedestal more closely. The surface was smooth and worn, but her fingers brushed against something that felt different, a subtle indentation, barely visible, running along its base. "This mark," she murmured, her voice laced with wonder. "It wasn't there before." Slowly, she pressed down on the indentation, and to their amazement, the pedestal shifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, there was a small, crystalline object, its edges etched with a series of symbols that mirrored the ones scattered across the room. Serena's breath caught as she recognized the pattern. This is the key. It has to be." Adrian stepped back, a sense of triumph flickering through him as he watched Serena hold the crystal in her hand. The once elusive puzzle was beginning to reveal its secrets, the missing piece now in their grasp. Serena placed the crystal onto the pedestal, aligning it with the glowing symbols around them. The moment it made contact, the chamber seemed to breathe, a soft, resonant hum filling the air. The barrier, which had once pulsed with threatening energy, now began to calm, its patterns shifting slowly, as if acknowledging their discovery. The magic in the room was no longer a force to be reckoned with, but a guide, leading them through the trial. As the barrier dissolved, the passageway ahead of them opened, and with it, the promise of what was to come. They had found the missing piece, and their journey could continue. Serena's gaze never wavered from the intricate symbols that danced and shifted across the chamber's walls. She could feel the weight of the trial pressing down on her, the pulsating energy of the barrier a constant reminder that they were running out of time. Her fingers hovered over the glowing runes, tracing their edges as if the answer might reveal itself beneath her touch. The air felt heavy with magic, the currents of enchantment swirling around them. It was clear that the symbols were not just decorative, but part of a larger mechanism, a puzzle that was both ancient and complex. "There has to be a pattern, a sequence that we're not seeing," she murmured, her voice soft but determined. Her eyes flicked to Adrian, who was scanning the runes just as intently. "We need to focus on them, break them down, and find the connection." Adrian, who had been pacing in frustration, paused at Serena's words. His eyes narrowed as he turned back to the glowing symbols. The runes had seemed chaotic at first, impossible to decipher, but now they felt less like a wall and more like a puzzle waiting to be solved. He moved closer to the wall, his fingers brushing lightly against the nearest rune. The coolness of the surface sent a shiver down his spine, but he ignored it, focusing on the task at hand. Each symbol shifted under his touch, moving like liquid, but with each movement, he could feel something more tangible beneath the surface. He stepped back, taking in the full scope of the chamber, letting the patterns form in his mind. "It's like a code," he said, his voice filled with understanding. "These symbols, they're not random. They're part of something larger, something we have to unlock." Serena nodded, her gaze sharpening as she started to make connections between the runes. She ran her hand along the symbols, her touch delicate yet purposeful, as if she were trying to feel their rhythm rather than simply see them. Slowly, the puzzle began to come together in her mind, a series of interconnected shapes and patterns that seemed to follow a logical sequence. "The symbols are linked," she said, her voice taking on a confident edge. "Look at how they move together, like a wave. Each one flows into the next. It's not just their meaning, but how they interact with each other." Her fingers hovered over a particular rune, her eyes narrowing as she studied it. "This one, it's different. It's the starting point. If we can unlock it, the rest will follow." Adrian stepped closer, his breath steadying as he watched Serena's fingers hover over the rune. He could sense the subtle shift in the atmosphere, a hum of magic that seemed to respond to her touch. The room had grown quiet, as if holding its breath in anticipation. "Do you think it will activate something?" he asked, his voice low but filled with hope. Serena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pressed her fingers gently into the rune, her touch sending a pulse of energy through the air. For a moment, nothing happened, and Adrian's heart skipped a beat. But then, the symbols on the walls began to glow more brightly, their colors shifting, and the barrier that had loomed over them seemed to waver, as if responding to their actions. A soft rumble reverberated through the chamber, and Serena's face lit up with a mixture of relief and triumph. "I knew it," she said softly. "This is the key." The barrier's energy shifted again, the swirling patterns now calming as the symbols began to align with one another. Serena and Adrian exchanged a glance, both of them silently acknowledging how far they had come and how close they were to unlocking the mystery of the trial. The chamber, which had felt so oppressive before, now seemed to pulse with a quieter, more controlled energy. They had cracked the code, solved the puzzle, and with it, the first barrier had fallen. As the shimmering energy dissipated, the passage ahead of them slowly opened, revealing the next step in their journey. They had made progress, but Serena knew that this was only the beginning. The reef was full of mysteries, and the trials ahead would be just as demanding. But for now, they had succeeded. And that success, however small, was enough to keep them moving forward. As Serena's fingers traced over the runes, she felt a sudden shift in the air, a subtle but unmistakable vibration. She paused, her attention drawn to a particular cluster of symbols that seemed to resonate with the surrounding energy. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she observed the runes more closely, their intricate designs starting to form a recognizable pattern. "Look at these," she murmured, her voice low with realization. "These runes, they're arranged in a sequence. See how they fit together? It's like they're telling a story, one that's meant to be unlocked in a specific order." She gestured toward the symbols, her hand hovering above them as she studied their placements. "We need to align them correctly. This might be the key to activating the barrier." Adrian leaned closer, squinting at the runes Serena had pointed to. At first glance, they had appeared as nothing more than random marks, their meaning lost in their complexity. But now, with Serena's focus guiding him, he began to see the flow between them. Each rune connected to the next, not just in shape, but in energy, as though they were part of a larger mechanism that required precise coordination. "You're right," he said, his voice steady as he moved alongside her. "They're not just symbols, they're instructions. A sequence we have to follow." His fingers brushed against one of the runes, feeling the subtle pulse of magic that emanated from it. It was as if the rune was waiting, eager for the right touch to unlock its potential. Serena nodded, her eyes locked on the sequence as she mentally mapped out the order they needed to follow. The barrier around them seemed to respond to their actions, its energy fluctuating with each passing moment. She could feel the barrier testing them, challenging their resolve as they worked to decipher the runes. "We need to be careful," she warned, her voice a low whisper. "If we make a mistake, the whole thing could reset. We have to align these symbols exactly as they were meant to be. Any misstep could cost us." Her hand hovered over the first rune in the sequence, her fingers trembling slightly with the weight of the task ahead. It was as though the fate of their progress rested entirely on the correct placement of each symbol. Adrian exhaled slowly, stepping back slightly to give Serena space as she focused. The air between them seemed to thrum with anticipation, the chamber alive with magic that waited to be released. He watched as Serena positioned her hand just above the first rune in the sequence, the light from the runes flickering in response. His mind raced with thoughts of the trials ahead. The reef had already proven itself to be a place of immense power and mystery, and this trial was no exception. They were inching closer to breaking through, but the path forward seemed increasingly elusive. Still, he trusted Serena's judgment and expertise. She was the guide in this unknown territory, and together, they had a chance to succeed. With a deep breath, Serena pressed her fingers to the first rune. There was a soft hum, almost imperceptible at first, but then it grew in intensity, filling the chamber with a low, resonant vibration. The runes before her began to glow more brightly, their colors shifting in response to her touch. "It's working," she whispered, her voice filled with quiet wonder. As the first rune settled into place, she moved to the next, repeating the process with careful precision. Adrian watched, his gaze never leaving her as she activated the sequence. The energy of the barrier seemed to ripple, then calm, as if it were recognizing the correct order. With each rune Serena activated, the chamber grew more alive, and the path ahead became clearer. Together, they were unlocking the ancient magic of the reef, one step at a time. Adrian's eyes scanned the sequence of runes Serena had pointed out, a sense of clarity settling over him. The complexity of the symbols had initially thrown him off, but with Serena's guidance, the puzzle was beginning to make sense. Each rune seemed to call to him, as if it were part of a greater whole. The shapes, the lines, and the subtle energy they emitted were not just random markings. They were a language of sorts, one that required careful attention and the right touch. He could feel the weight of the trial pressing in, the magical barrier humming with latent power. But now, more than ever, he trusted in Serena's instincts. "Let's try it," he said, his voice steady, his resolve firm. Serena gave him a nod of acknowledgement, her fingers lightly brushing the surface of the first rune. She could feel the pulse of magic beneath her fingertips, the power waiting to be unlocked. The barriers surrounding them continued to shimmer and shift, responding to the slightest change in their movements. Her heart raced, but she kept her focus, guiding Adrian with each step. "We need to move quickly but carefully," she warned, her voice soft but urgent. "The sequence has to be perfect, or it will reset." Adrian stood beside her, his hand hovering over the second rune. He mirrored Serena's movements, his fingers grazing the intricate designs as he mentally prepared himself for the next phase of the trial. The air around them felt charged, every breath heavy with the anticipation of what might come next. As he studied the runes more closely, he realized that each symbol seemed to correspond with an emotion or idea, strength, unity, resolve, concepts they had already tested on their journey so far. These runes, he realized, weren't just part of the reef's magic. They were also reflections of the bond between him and Serena. "We've got this," he said with quiet conviction, his hand gently pressing down on the next rune. As his fingers made contact, the reaction was immediate. A low hum filled the air, and the runes seemed to come alive beneath their touch, glowing brighter and pulsating in a synchronized rhythm. The barrier surrounding them rippled, its colors shifting with each activation. It was as if the magic itself was watching, waiting for their every move. Adrian felt the surge of energy around him, the sensation both exhilarating and overwhelming. The air seemed to thicken with the weight of their actions, and he realized that this moment, this trial, was testing more than just their physical strength, it was testing their unity. If they could work in perfect harmony, the barrier would yield. If not, they would be lost to its labyrinthine depths. Serena, seeing the progress they had made, continued to guide their movements, her focus sharp and unwavering. Each rune they activated brought them one step closer to breaking through, and with each successful turn, her confidence grew. She could feel the tension lifting, replaced by a quiet sense of triumph. The barrier had not broken yet, but it was weakening, its once impassable energy now bending to their will. She exchanged a brief glance with Adrian, her eyes reflecting the unspoken understanding between them. "We're almost there," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. Together, they pressed on, unlocking the reef's secrets one rune at a time. With steady hands and focused minds, Adrian and Serena began the delicate task of aligning the runes. Serena's eyes were fixed on the sequence she had uncovered, her fingers tracing the patterns on the smooth surface of the magical stones. She could feel the intricate energy pulsing beneath her fingertips, the barrier's power thrumming in sync with her movements. Adrian mirrored her actions, his attention sharp as he positioned his hands in the exact spots where the runes had been etched. Each time they touched the symbols, the chamber seemed to grow quieter, the air humming with a growing resonance. The previously chaotic energy of the barrier began to slow, responding to their careful approach. As they continued, their movements grew more fluid, as if they had become extensions of the puzzle itself. The synchronization between them was effortless, a reflection of the bond they had forged throughout their journey. Serena's concentration deepened, her breath steady, while Adrian remained vigilant beside her. Together, they began to uncover the subtle connections between the runes, aligning them with increasing precision. The pulsating barrier, once erratic and wild, now mirrored their rhythm, its chaotic swirls of color gradually shifting into smoother, more harmonious patterns. The oppressive tension in the chamber lifted slightly, replaced by a sense of controlled power. With each rune they aligned, the barrier seemed to breathe with them. The once jagged edges of the shimmering energy softened, its light becoming more focused and warm. The swirling patterns of light that had previously been disorienting began to settle into more structured designs, their shifting shapes aligning with the growing cadence of their actions. The barrier no longer seemed like an obstacle, but a test, a challenge that was meant to be overcome through patience and unity. Adrian felt a surge of confidence as their work began to show visible results. The reef, he realized, was not a place to be conquered, it was a place to be understood, its magic as much about harmony as it was about strength. Serena's eyes flicked briefly to Adrian, and in that moment, she saw the determination in his gaze. They had come so far, and the final piece was almost within reach. She pressed her hand gently against the last rune, her heart pounding with anticipation. The air around them seemed to hold its breath as she completed the sequence, and for a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a sudden rush of energy, the barrier's light brightened, then softened, its edges dissipating like mist in the morning sun. The chamber seemed to exhale, the tension finally breaking. As the last remnants of the magical barrier faded, Adrian and Serena stood in silence for a moment, their eyes meeting. Their synchronized effort had paid off. They had unlocked the magic of the reef, passed the first test, and proven that their unity was stronger than the enchantments designed to divide them. The once imposing barrier was now nothing more than a shimmering memory, a challenge they had overcome together. With the path now clear, they exchanged a brief but triumphant smile, knowing that while this trial was behind them, the journey was far from over. The reef had many more secrets to reveal, but they were ready to face whatever came next. As they aligned the final rune, the barrier's surface shimmered with an unexpected intensity, its light becoming more vibrant with each passing second. The once erratic pulsation steadied, the swirling patterns of color shifting into smooth, graceful motions that seemed to flow like water. Serena's heart raced as she felt the barrier's energy respond to their efforts. The air around them buzzed with an electric hum, the magic of the reef converging around them. The room seemed to hold its breath as the shimmering light grew brighter, the colors deepening and swirling with greater clarity. Adrian's gaze never left the barrier, his breath shallow as he awaited the moment of release. Then, as if in response to their shared efforts, a soft, melodic chime filled the chamber. The sound was pure and clear, reverberating through the walls like the toll of a distant bell. It carried with it a sense of accomplishment, echoing the steady rhythm of their success. The barrier's surface rippled gently, the colors now flowing in perfect harmony as if it had become a living thing, breathing alongside them. The chamber, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now exuded a peaceful energy, the reverberations of the chime calming the atmosphere. The sound lingered in the air, filling the space with a quiet, soothing resonance that seemed to affirm their triumph. Serena felt a wave of relief wash over her muscles loosening as the barrier's oppressive presence faded. The once formidable magical construct now appeared like a mere illusion, its shimmering light dissolving into the air with a final, delicate pulse. She exchanged a brief glance with Adrian, her expression one of quiet triumph. They had done it. Their combined efforts had unlocked the barrier, proving their unity and strength. The chime, still echoing softly, seemed to celebrate their success, and for a moment, the two of them simply stood in awe, taking in the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. Adrian allowed himself a deep breath, the weight of their journey momentarily lifting from his shoulders. He could feel the pulse of magic still lingering in the air, the very essence of the reef responding to their efforts. It was as though the reef itself was acknowledging their success, offering them a quiet blessing as they moved forward. His mind was already turning toward what lay ahead, knowing that this was only the first of many challenges, but for now, there was a brief moment of peace. The sense of accomplishment was sweet, and he relished in it, allowing the quiet hum of the chamber to settle into his bones. As the last echoes of the chime faded, the path before them cleared. The once impenetrable barrier was no more, and in its place, a new sense of possibility filled the chamber. Serena and Adrian stepped forward, the way now open to them. There was no turning back, but they were no longer uncertain. With each step, they were closer to unraveling the reef's mysteries and breaking the curse that had bound them. Together, they had conquered the first trial, and now, their bond was stronger than ever. The reef's secrets awaited, and they were ready to face whatever came next. As the shimmering energy barrier melted away, the oppressive weight that had hung over them lifted. The barrier, which had once pulsed with an almost tangible force, dissolved into the air with a soft, echoing sigh, leaving behind only the faintest trace of its magic. In its place, a new passageway opened before them, a narrow tunnel illuminated by the soft glow of bioluminescent plants and the distant shimmer of underwater crystals. The air was cool, the atmosphere calm, and for a brief moment, it felt as though the reef itself had granted them passage, acknowledging their success. Adrian and Serena stood still for a moment, taking in the sight of the newly revealed path. They exchanged a look, one filled with equal parts relief and exhaustion. Their muscles ached, their minds still buzzing from the intense puzzle they had just solved, but there was also a spark of triumph in their eyes. They had overcome the first trial, a significant hurdle in their journey, and the weight of it began to settle into something more manageable, something they could carry forward. The tension that had gripped them earlier now seemed to dissipate, replaced by a quiet satisfaction that came from knowing they had succeeded together. Serena wiped a bead of sweat from her brow, her expression softening as she glanced at Adrian. "We did it," she said, her voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. Her usual calm demeanor was edged with a trace of relief, as though she, too, had been holding her breath for the outcome. The reef had tested them, pushing them to the brink, but they had proven themselves worthy. She took a slow breath, grounding herself, and adjusted her equipment, ready to move forward. The trials ahead were still uncertain, but for now, they had earned this brief moment of respite. Adrian offered her a small, weary smile, his body still tense from the effort. "It wasn't easy," he replied, his voice quiet but firm. "But we made it through. Together." His words held a weight of meaning, a recognition that their bond had only strengthened in the face of adversity. The chamber behind them seemed to fade, its trials behind them now, and before them stretched the unknown, a new challenge, a new trial to overcome. Yet, despite the exhaustion weighing on him, Adrian felt a flicker of something else: hope. Hope that together, they could continue to unravel the secrets of the reef and confront whatever dangers lay ahead. With a final glance back at the now dissolved barrier, Adrian stepped forward, leading the way into the passage. Serena followed closely behind, her steps sure and deliberate, as they ventured deeper into the heart of the reef. The passageway, though dark and winding, felt different now, less ominous and more like an invitation. The trials had begun, but they were not without purpose. Together, they had proven their resilience, and the reef seemed to acknowledge that. They were ready for whatever lay ahead, their resolve solidified and their unity unwavering. The journey was far from over, but this victory, however small, was theirs to cherish. "We did it," Adrian said, his voice filled with a sense of accomplishment as he looked over at Serena. The words hung in the air between them, a moment of reflection on the arduous trial they had just overcome. The weight of the challenge seemed to lift from his shoulders, replaced by a quiet pride. Their success had been hard-won, earned through patience, teamwork, and an unspoken understanding that had grown between them as the trial unfolded. His gaze met Serena's, and in that shared glance, they both recognized the magnitude of their achievement. Serena gave a small nod, her expression one of quiet satisfaction, but her sharp eyes never wavered. She had been focused throughout the trial, her mind working constantly to decipher the intricate puzzle, and now, as the barrier dissolved, she allowed herself a brief moment to appreciate the effort they had both put into this first test. The tension in the air had eased, replaced by a gentle hum of magic that seemed to flow more freely now. "Yes," she agreed, her voice steady, though her lips curled slightly in a faint smile. "But this is only the beginning. The reef will continue to test us." Adrian exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing as he took in the surroundings. The chamber around them, once oppressive with the shimmering barrier, now seemed vast and open. The soft light from the bioluminescent plants cast a peaceful glow on the walls, and the calming hum of magic filled the space with an almost soothing aura. Despite the weariness that clung to him, Adrian felt a flicker of hope. They had proven themselves capable of facing whatever challenges the reef could throw at them. Their bond had been tested, and it had held strong. "We've learned something important," Adrian continued, his voice thoughtful as he glanced at the newly revealed passageway ahead. "We can handle whatever comes next, as long as we stay focused and trust each other." He didn't speak the words lightly. He meant them with the depth of someone who had faced trials before, someone who knew that victory was never guaranteed, but that the strength of their partnership would make all the difference in the world. His eyes lingered on Serena for a moment, the unspoken understanding between them clear. They were no longer just two individuals working together. They were a team, a partnership strengthened by shared adversity. Serena nodded again, her face set in quiet determination. "That's the key," she said, her voice firm and resolute. "We've passed this test, but the path ahead won't be any easier. We'll face more challenges, and the reef will continue to push us to our limits. But together we're ready." Her words carried the weight of someone who understood the stakes and the risks they faced. Yet, despite the uncertainty that lay ahead, there was no hesitation in her tone, no doubt in her mind. The reef had thrown its first trial at them, and they had passed. Now, with their bond solidified, they were prepared for whatever came next. With their resolve strengthened and their spirits lifted by this first victory, Adrian and Serena turned their attention to the new passageway before them. The path ahead was still shrouded in mystery, but for the first time, it felt like something they could conquer together. With a final, shared glance, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready for whatever challenges the magical reef would present. They had passed the first test, and that victory would carry them through the trials yet to come. Serena's eyes sparkled with pride as she stood tall, her gaze meeting Adrian's with a quiet but fierce satisfaction. "Indeed," she said, her voice carrying the weight of their accomplishment. "This trial tested our resolve and cooperation, and we proved ourselves worthy." Her words held a quiet confidence, a deep understanding of the significance of their success. She could feel the pulse of magic still vibrating through the chamber, and it was as though the reef itself acknowledged their victory. The shimmer of the dissolving barrier still lingered in the air, a tangible reminder of what they had just overcome. Every step had required both physical and mental endurance, but they had emerged stronger for it. The pride in Serena's expression deepened as she looked at the now vanishing remnants of the barrier. It had been a challenge not just of skill but of trust in each other, and in their ability to face the unknown together. The barrier had not only tested their understanding of the reef's magic, but it had also forced them to rely on their instincts and their connection. There was no room for hesitation, no time for second-guessing. They had needed to act in harmony, to move as one, and they had succeeded. Serena allowed herself a moment to savor the success, knowing that the journey ahead would demand even more from them. The barrier was designed to assess our unity, she continued, her voice steady and reflective. And we overcame it through our combined efforts. She turned her gaze to the path that now lay open before them, the passageway leading deeper into the heart of the reef. It was an unspoken truth that every trial they would face from here on out would demand the same level of teamwork and determination. But Serena wasn't daunted by that thought. Rather, it filled her with a sense of purpose. They had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The reef's magic would challenge them, but it had already revealed the most important lesson, that they were stronger together than they could have ever been apart. Adrian, standing beside her, felt the weight of Serena's words settle in his chest. Their success wasn't just about completing a puzzle or passing a test. It was about something deeper, something far more vital. It was about the bond they had forged in the heat of the challenge. "We did it," he said, the pride in his voice unmistakable. "Not just because we were capable, but because we worked as a team." It was an unspoken truth between them now. This was no longer just about each of them individually. This was about their partnership, a partnership that had been tested and proven in the face of adversity. And with that truth in their hearts, they were ready for whatever came next. As they stood there, the realization of their shared strength settled over them like a cloak. Their victory in this trial had solidified not just their progress in the reef, but the foundation of their partnership. The obstacles ahead would undoubtedly grow in complexity, but now they had the unwavering belief that they could face them together. Serena turned toward the passage, her steps purposeful, and Adrian followed closely behind. The trials were far from over, but they were no longer the same individuals who had first entered the reef. They had grown in strength and unity, and that was a force far greater than any magic the reef could throw at them. Together, they were ready for what lay ahead. As Adrian and Serena moved through the newly revealed passageway, the sense of achievement from overcoming the barrier lingered, like a steady pulse of warmth within them. The magic of the reef seemed to respond to their success, the atmosphere crackling with an energy that hinted at even greater trials to come. Each step they took felt heavier with purpose, as if the very stone beneath their feet recognized their triumph and offered them its silent approval. The passage itself was narrow and winding, leading them further into the heart of the reef, but the path ahead no longer seemed so daunting. The shared victory had bonded them in a way that made the unknown less terrifying. The trials of the reef were far from over, but with each success, their confidence grew. What had seemed like insurmountable obstacles at the start now appeared as challenges to be met head-on. Serena's eyes gleamed with the kind of focus that only came from overcoming adversity, and Adrian's expression was no longer clouded by uncertainty. They were learning, adapting, and growing stronger with every passing moment. The reef had tested their resolve, but instead of breaking them, it had forged a connection between them that was unshakable. Each challenge only made them more determined to uncover the secrets that lay hidden in its depths. As they continued deeper into the passage, the atmosphere seemed to shift subtly, the air heavier with anticipation. The magical energy that had once been an overwhelming force now felt like a companion, a reminder that they were not alone in this journey. The sense of achievement they carried from solving the barrier's puzzle wrapped around them like a protective shield. With each success, they were becoming more attuned to the reef's rhythms, more attuned to the magic that pulsed beneath the surface. The trials ahead would test them in ways they could not yet foresee, but they now knew they were ready. The bond they had forged in their shared success was the foundation of their strength. Despite the challenges ahead, they walked with a renewed sense of purpose. Adrian's mind, usually clouded by doubt, now buzzed with ideas and strategies. The reef was still a vast and mysterious entity, but each trial they passed was a small victory, and those victories added up. Serena, ever the steady guide, walked beside him with a quiet confidence that seemed to steady the very air around them. Together, they had proven that they could face the impossible, and each step forward was a testament to their ability to navigate whatever lay ahead. The trials might grow harder, but they knew that their growing partnership was the key to their success. As they rounded the corner of the passageway, the path opened into a new chamber, its vastness both awe-inspiring and intimidating. The walls shimmered with an ethereal glow, casting long shadows that seemed to dance as the water moved. The reef's mysteries were far from unraveled, and the road ahead remained unclear. But with their confidence bolstered and their alliance solidified, Adrian and Serena faced whatever awaited them with a sense of unity and resolve that had been forged in the heart of the reef itself. The trials would continue, but they were no longer afraid. They were ready, together, for whatever challenges the magical depths had in store. The path before them stretched onward, an uncharted expanse that seemed to whisper of both promise and danger. The reef's depths were filled with untold mysteries, each step forward carrying them further into the unknown. Despite the uncertainty, Adrian and Serena were no longer daunted by the vastness that lay ahead. The weight of their shared victory, the first trial they had overcome together, settled into them like a steadying anchor. They were no longer just two individuals navigating the reef. They were a united force, their combined determination a beacon in the darkness that threatened to overwhelm them. The unknown no longer seemed as intimidating as it had before. With each passing moment, the sense of urgency from the trial they had just completed began to fade, replaced by a quiet resolve. The reef's enchantments pulsed around them, but now they carried a new sense of confidence. The magical currents, once unpredictable and mysterious, now felt like an extension of the world they had just unlocked. Adrian walked beside Serena, his mind turning with possibilities. Each challenge they faced would test them further, but with the understanding they had gained, they were more prepared than before. Their bond had deepened in ways that could not be easily broken, and they were determined to face whatever lay ahead, side by side. The journey through the reef was far from over, but the duo's recent success had shown them that teamwork was the key to unlocking its mysteries. The chamber they had just exited felt like a turning point, a marker of the strength they could summon together. Serena's gaze remained sharp, scanning the waters ahead with a focus that showed no signs of wavering. Adrian, his usually thoughtful demeanor now tempered by a quiet confidence, kept pace beside her. He knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges that required more than just raw strength. They would need to rely on their intellect, their intuition, and the bond they were continuing to build. But the foundation was strong, and that gave him hope. The waters around them began to shift, and the once tranquil atmosphere of the reef seemed to hum with anticipation. Each movement they made rippled through the water, leaving behind faint echoes of their presence. The silence of the underwater world was broken only by the sound of their breathing and the soft, rhythmic hum of the magical energies that surrounded them. Serena's hand brushed against the coral as she passed, a silent gesture of respect to the living magic of the reef. Adrian followed closely, his senses alert to every change in the environment. There was a sense of urgency now, but it wasn't a panic. It was the quiet urgency of knowing they were on the precipice of something vast, something important. As they ventured deeper into the reef, the atmosphere around them seemed to thicken with the weight of hidden secrets. The unknown stretched before them, and yet, instead of fear, there was a quiet anticipation. Adrian and Serena shared a glance, their unspoken understanding clear. They were ready. Together they would uncover the truths of the reef, face its trials, and navigate its perilous waters. The first challenge had only been the beginning, but with each step, they grew more in tune with the magic that pulsed beneath the surface. The path ahead was still shrouded in mystery, but they were no longer walking it alone. They were walking it as partners, bound by purpose and strengthened by the trials they had already overcome.